कल जो हम लोगों ने होमवर्क दिया था वो प्रैक्टिस किया सर आपने?
किया तो किया,
ओके।
मगर वो आईएसओ चेंज नहीं हो रहा है।
आईएसओ फिक्स है,
नो,
राइट?
ISO, I kept it in the manual mode. I
ओके।
went to the menu,
हम्म।
change the ISO, but after I click, it is showing only 250 or so. It is not changing, but the image is changing. But the ISO number is not changing in the
ओके।
properties when I see. For example, I will just image is changing.
ओके।
I don't know for what. Once it changed, after that, see, you can see that camera.
Yes, I'm able to see.
Ah, yeah. Here I went ISO settings, sensitivity, then
Right.
change here 250 like that it will give. Okay.
Okay.
That I change and click the photo.
Hmm.
But after the words, I keep changing 200, 400, 250, 400, 800, 1000, 1250, 1600, all that.
Right.
When I kept the mode dial in M, okay, I kept the
Okay.
mode dial in M.
Mhm.
If I do that, the picture, I think different light is coming. But
Right.
when I check this, what the settings are,
Mhm.
the F is around 4 always. The shutter speed is 125.
Mhm.
Okay, but ISO doesn't change. But
Okay.
the
Okay.
picture seems to be changing.
Right.
Picture seems to be changing, but ISO it is
Is
not
not getting
showing.
changed. Exactly. So why it has been happened, sir? When you're clicking that ISO sensitivity option in your camera menu function, okay? So
Okay.
what we have studied, we have to keep ISO, that is the auto ISO, only when my light situation is getting changed with every image. But as of now, when you have put the camera on auto ISO sensitivity option, so you put at log over there, that is the 250 will be your normal ISO and it will not get changed. So that's the reason your ISO is not getting changed.
Oh,
Why?
in the
Because
night it changed. In the night
right,
it changed,
light it
but in
changes.
the morning it is not changing.
Exactly. So why it has been happen? Just because we have put the camera on the sensitivity mode on. So now just
Uh,
press the menu button, turn on the
okay.
camera, go to the menu.
Done. Menu.
Okay, ISO sensitivity option is there, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, put it as a off.
Auto.
No, off, off,
Ah,
off.
oh, okay, okay,
Okay,
okay.
so now just go to your capture in screen, like
Camera.
press that half shutter
Okay,
button.
okay. One.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, so now remove the lens cap and check where now what is the amount of the ISO. Now your camera is already having the setting. In the menu screen, you will be able to now find out
Yeah.
that ISO number.
250.
250 is showing, like, okay.
Hmm.
So just press the ISO button, which is in the left hand side of your camera.
Check. Okay.
Okay, scroll the mode dial and put it
Okay.
on 400 or like a 600, 400 or 800.
Okay. I have
Okay,
put that. Hmm.
okay, and now click the image.
Okay.
Okay, so just press the information button. You will be able to see like ISO is 800
Yeah.
now, right?
No. 400.
400 you
Okay.
have kept it.
It
Okay,
has
okay.
changed.
Okay, so because the camera is a manual mode and the light is also there. So when you are
Hmm.
switching the ISO setting, so your number will
Hmm.
get changed when you are using a manual mode and auto sensitivity off option.
Oh. Okay.
What we have understood in the last video, that is in the last lecture, where my light situation is getting different after each
Hmm.
shot. So that time
Hmm.
I have a run and gun situation, so I have to keep the ISO auto sensitivity option on. But wherever I'm using as a manual setting ISO,
Hmm.
so I can keep it as a off, that is ISO sensitivity option will be the off, and I will set the manually that how much will be my ISO.
Okay.
So
Got
that's the
it, got
reason.
it.
Yeah. So that confusion was there.
Even though I am keeping, it is ignoring, it is only taking the auto.
Exactly, because we put a camera on a limit that it will be having it will be having ISO only 250. Beyond that, camera will doesn't allow us to capture the
Hmm.
image. So that's the
Okay.
reason in every image you are getting ISO only 250. Okay,
Okay. Fair.
sure, sir. So now
Today I
let's
will complete all the exercises. I
definitely.
have some more problem in the camera in the sense
Okay,
it is quite old in the sense of the word. The battery also it is draining off very fast. Okay,
right.
maybe or I'm keeping the camera on for a longer time. I don't know all that. Today I'll buy a new battery also because
Okay.
yesterday for half an hour I charged, but this is a very powerful battery. No, it requires long charging. I think.
Exactly. It always now requires 2.5 hours to get a charge, and sometimes
Yeah,
it can be more than that, depending
more than
upon the
that also.
exactly. So
So
that's the reason. Mhm. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
uh, I have this problem.
Okay.
Otherwise, I think I was more comfortable in using the camera yesterday.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
I created a object and I am not disturbing that.
Mhm.
So I start learning now. I know generally how where to which button to press, what happens. Generally, I
Exactly.
am getting transferring the image. All that is okay. I cleaned up the memory. I transferred everything into the computer. Now almost it is some today's pictures
Sure. Sure.
only.
Sure,
So
sir.
that I cleaned up. I got one extra memory also.
Okay. Extra memory card.
Carry
Right.
this. Yeah, I had somewhere. So in our house we have so many things, but
Right.
not organized very well.
I can understand, sir. But
It,
day by day, when you will be having the practice, so day by day you will get more familiar with the
yeah,
camera
I
and the
put
setting.
all camera related together. Now I
Exactly.
have the charger, I have everything. I got it.
Sure.
Okay, good. I'm happy to that extent. I'm moving, but
Right.
I didn't plan. I didn't know somebody will come and teach me. Otherwise I would have sat and organized all the things and all.
I- Okay, okay. No
Many
problem.
time Urban Pro, other things I have tried.
Mhm.
Generally, people come
Right.
on the first day when I give the thing,
Mhm.
see the thing. Then what they will do is they will talk to me or they will keep sending message for a day. After that, they will not do anything. Even if I call, they will not respond and things like that.
Exactly.
I was not very happy with that kind of situation. Initially 10 people will call. After that, nobody calls.
That is the reason because sir, because when inquiry comes, so that the time the too many photographers, too many teachers will
Yes.
approach to the student, but they will
Yeah.
not try to understand that what is the exactly requirement. They will just not
Yeah.
try to understand that he should be opt for my courses like that. But
Yeah.
if you have a patience, if you have a skill to take a demo lecture to
Yeah.
know the people, and then you can you can take the knowledge
Yeah.
process, so it is getting smoothly. Okay.
And it actually only sometime it clicks in
Exactly.
any situation.
Right.
As
Right.
it depends on you and me both.
Right, so
It
and
doesn't only
also
depend on me, it depends on you and me.
definitely,
Okay.
definitely it
You
depends.
made a call, we chatted for a longer time. It is not just that, okay, it is 200 rupees, are you willing to pay or not? It is not always the money. you
Exactly.
know that too, you should see whom you are talking. It's an advice to you. You
Exactly,
should
sir.
see a person who is already senior citizen, okay, wants to learn, means he has some deep interest. Otherwise he
Definitely, sir.
doesn't
Because
call. And
he has already saw the life, and from that senior citizen I can take too much knowledge. So that the reason is there, because now also when I talk to the people, so like they seems me like a 21 or 22 years of old a guy,
yeah,
because my personality looks like a young kid.
yeah,
But when
yeah,
I not take them, so that depends that the failures, then the life which you saw, so automatically your patience levels get enhanced, and you are able to understand the person who is talking to you. then you will listen, and your all these capabilities, then you can discuss. So that's the reason there is no problem in that. So now we will start the next topic of our lecture.
Yes.
That will be
Okay.
a much interesting topic for us.
Okay.
We
Okay.
having,
Focusing
yeah, the depth of field.
composition.
So
DO.
depth of field, right? We have learned understood the aperture. We have learned the shutter speed, then ISO.
ISO.
So today's lecture will be divided into the two parts. One will be your depth of field, which will understood, and second there will be one exposure triangle, which means the
Okay.
entire combination of three different settings, which is
Three.
aperture, shutter, and ISO. So that we will study. Okay. So
Okay.
just as of now, for getting the one more clear idea about these settings which we already have learned.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah, here.
Then I understood from the D90,
Hmm.
L.3 means it is 300, I believe, lower side. And
No,
yes, in the camera, he has given high also.
high
H
H 1.2,
1.01.
1.2.
It is
Right,
on the higher side. After 4000, H 1.0,
1 point.
0.3 and all will come. Here
That
on the lower side, it is L zero point 0.3 and all.
right. What happens in camera? Every model difference, and in some models they have much advanced settings. Some beginner models of camera which we have a limited setting. So depending upon your camera model, the settings also get enhanced, or settings also gets, like we can say, increase. So in your camera you have a 4000 ISO, then H1 L1 setting you have. But if you go like a, that is beginner camera, beginner level camera, so in that camera that settings will not be there. It will be like only up to the 4000. So H1
Hmm.
L1 settings will not be there. So that again we will
Ah.
study. As of now we will study this entire image, which will help us to understand that whenever we have to change our setting, and when we can go ahead with the particular ideal situation. Like I
Hmm.
told you that three pillars of photography, which is the aperture, then the ISO, and the shutter speed, right?
Correct.
So
Hmm.
these three things combinedly sets the exposure triangle. So what is the exactly
Hmm.
exposure triangle means? It is an technique where my image will be having the equal light which is required, not more than that. That is a underexposed or overexposed image. I will be able to get the sharp image. Again, I will be able to get a light which is required in the image, and I will be able to get the sharpness of the image. So these three things are basically depends upon three factors, which is the ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. So
Okay.
now first, that is the first pillar which will now go, that is aperture. So we have already understood that when I'm using a less aperture, my background will be blur. When I'm using a high aperture amount, my background and the foreground will be sharper. So
Hmm.
again there is a ISO, which is always denote that when I'm using ISO much more number, which will result in a grainy image in my final resolution, that is the final image. And if I go with the less ISO, then my image will be having the sharpness. There won't be any grains, like, which is your shutter
Yes.
speed, which is combines to your sharpness. So if I'm using a high shutter speed, so I will be able to capture the motion. So in that any running activity I will be able to freeze. If I go lower shutter speed, so in that situation my subject will get blur image. So that thing
Hmm.
we have already understood. So this combinedly, that these particular pillars are interdependent on each other. So if I am compromising in ISO, so I have to compensate that two things, which is the aperture and the shutter speed. If I'm
Hmm.
using the aperture as my base level, if I'm compromising on aperture, so I have to compensate on the shutter speed and the ISO. So whenever, depending upon the light in which I am shooting any subject, I have to keep in mind, like, I have to make a different settings in only three particular parameters: aperture, ISO, and shutter speed. And after proper combination of these three will be equal to zero. Like we will
Hmm.
just take one example. Okay, over here, right? So now you are able to see the whiteboard, right?
Hmm.
So like it is a mathematical equation. If my entire total needs to be a 10, so I have the three different elements, like aperture, like your shutter speed, and ISO. So what I will do, if my aperture, if I place on a 5, so plus and plus is required. So I will do to compensate remaining pi between shutter speed and ISO. It can be 3. So my entire total should be like 10. So I will do 2 is my aperture. So depending upon any situation, my entire result should be 10. So like this, whenever I am using light, so I have to keep in understand that entire is equal to 0. Like my equation
Oh,
is like aperture, aperture,
shutter speed.
shutter speed and ISO, which includes plus or minus, and my equals needs to be a 0, which is the
Okay.
your proper exposure meter, which we have already saw in your camera.
Okay.
So that again we will study in the today's lecture, but as of now, just to understand that my entire pillars of the photography which we see, 3 pillars, so it will always help me to understand which are the elements in which I have to compensate. Like
Okay.
yesterday we understood the ISO, and again today we will go ahead. So this is just a small example of the your exposure triangle. We will go ahead with one video which will help us understand
Okay.
ISO triangle in much better way.
Well, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the exposure triangle. It's really the foundation for everything about photography. Once you understand how the exposure triangle works, you're going to be able to make sure you get a great exposure, but you're also going to learn how to take control of all the buttons and dials on your camera and what they do and why they're there. But you'll also get creative control of your photographs so you can tell a better story. And so that's what the exposure triangle is all about. In fact, we're going to be spending a few episodes on the exposure triangle. We're going to break it down piece by piece so you can really get a handle on all the stuff that it does. Well, when we think about exposure, a lot of times we think about images being too bright or too dark, but there's more to it than that. We can have images that are noisy, or images that are blurry, or really nice and crisp, or images that have lots of stuff in focus, or just some one thing that's in focus, or maybe it's totally out of focus altogether. And the exposure triangle helps us understand how all of that works together. Now, the exposure triangle is made up of 3 things, and these 3 things never change. So once you have these down, you're going to be good to go forever. So don't fret. It's very, very simple. In the exposure triangle, we have the aperture, the shutter, and ISO. And these 3 things work together to give us a perfect exposure. I want to start to explain this by looking at the aperture. Now, the aperture is inside your camera's lens. In fact, if I take this lens off my camera, and we can look at this really close, I can move this in and out, and you can see clearly that the aperture is just this thing that lets more light in or less light in. It's growing and shrinking. So our aperture is in our lens, and I can make it really big or really small by just changing the aperture.
In aperture, now that is episode when we have understood the aperture, so we understood that there are the different blades in lens
Yes.
which allow. So these are the blades, sir, which combinedly form a particular layer of the black color, and we can control it, that small hole or a bigger hole. So small hole means your aperture will be number of high, that is f8,
Yeah.
f22, f32, and when you have a wider opening of your lens, your aperture will be too much small, that is we can say 1.2 or 1.4. So this lens which he is using, like a Leica is the company of the lens which is mentioning, and here the minimum aperture level of that lens is 1.4. so that
Oh.
is the minimum level of that particular lens. So here I can go up to 1.4, below that I can't go. That is below
Yeah.
that one option is there, 1.2 is there, and it's an 50 mm lens. So the focal length of the lens is a 50 mm. So that's the reason I will be able to capture the thing which is far away, like 2.5 feet, 3.5 feet from my camera. So distance, it should be like 3.5 feet maximum in your camera when you are using a 50 mm lens. So these are the particular set that parameters where we can judge or we can understand that how is the lens and what is the information about the lens. Like here, the E means your entire that diameter of the lens. So if I put on lens hood, like a lens cap, so I will be requiring 46 mm diameter lens hood. That
Okay.
numbers indicates your diameter of the lens. Okay, so
Okay.
just we will
Okay.
go ahead with the video.
Yes.
Aperture is in our lens, and I can make it really big or really small by just changing the aperture value. And our aperture values have numbers like f22, f16, f11, f8, and the smaller the number, the larger the opening, and the larger the number, the smaller the opening. I know that seems backwards, but that's how it is. F16 is really small, f1.4 is really big. Now, it's not important that you know what those numbers mean right now. We're going to explain that in a future episode, but right now it's important to understand that a big number means a small opening, and a small number means a big opening. I guarantee we're going to make that make sense for you in a future episode. But just remember, a big opening means lots of light is coming through, and a small opening means not very much light is coming through. So we've got a big number, not very much light because it's a small hole. A small number means lots of light is coming through because it's a big opening. Our aperture controls the quantity of light coming into our camera. So that little thing in our lens, it can be open or closed. It's letting a different quantity of light come into our camera. But there's another thing in our camera, everybody I'm sure knows about this. It's called the shutter. Now the shutter can go at a really fast speed. In fact, we'll look at this. There's the shutter. Bam! It goes really, let me turn on my camera. And it goes, wham, really, really fast. Or I can slow that down. That was at about 4,000th of a second. I can go all the way down to 500th of a second, even down to a 30th of a second. I can get a lot slower, half a second, 1 second, all the way down to 30 seconds, even a few minutes. And so just like the aperture, where it allows lots of light and not very much light, the shutter does sort of the same thing. The really fast shutter, not very much light is coming into our camera. The really slow shutter, lots of light is coming into our camera. So we've got these two things. The aperture that can let in lots of light or not very much light, and the shutter that can let in lots of light or not very much light. And those two things have to be balanced on sort of like a scale. So if this one's letting in a lot of light, well then this one needs to restrict so we don't get too much light. Or if this one's letting in not very much light, we need to open this one up so we get more light. So there's always a play in those two things, trying to figure out how much light to come in. We're going to talk about how our camera figures that out in a little bit. The third thing in our exposure triangle is called ISO. And ISO controls the sensitivity of our camera to light. Now, there's more to it than that, and a lot of those really geeky guys that know lots of science are always going to post a comment and say, no, it's about gain and all that stuff. But it's really easy to remember. Our ISO controls how sensitive our camera is to light, much like our eyes in a dark theater. When we go into a dark theater, at first we can't really see, but as our eyes adjust to the darkness, then we can see just fine, but we can't see as well as we can in bright daylight. The same thing is true of ISO. When you have a low ISO number like 100 or 200, our camera isn't very sensitive to light. So we have to either open up our aperture really wide or make a slow shutter speed, or have to be a really bright area, a really bright day. And as we increase our ISO, our camera becomes more and more sensitive to light. The problem is we also get noise in our images. So there is a penalty for having a high ISO. We have those three things: the aperture, more and less light; the shutter, more and less light; and the ISO, more and less sensitive to light, which is sort of the same thing as more or less light. Getting those three things in balance, we have something that's built into almost every modern camera, and that's called a meter. Now think about the meter sort of as a judge. The meter is looking at the settings on our camera, and it's saying, hey, if you set the aperture to this wide, I got to figure out how fast the shutter speed should be. Or if you set the shutter speed to this fast, I got to figure out how big or small the aperture should be. So the meter is judging things for us. And something that's very important to note, just because 2 settings work or 3 settings work in one situation doesn't mean it'll work in a different situation, because light is constantly changing, and that's why we need a meter in our camera. All right, let's put all of this stuff together. Now that we know about the 3 things, ISO, aperture, and shutter, and the judge or the meter that's built into our camera, how does all of this work? Well, it's pretty simple. Normally on the exposure triangle, you set 2 things, and our camera figures out the third using its meter. So you'll set either the ISO and the aperture, and the camera will figure out the correct shutter speed, or you'll set the ISO and shutter speed, and the camera will figure out the correct aperture value, and it does that using the built-in light meter. Now the question you're asking me is, well, which one do I start with? Should I set the aperture or should I set the shutter? Well, it really depends on the kind of photographer that you are. Traditionally, scenic photographers and portrait photographers are more concerned with the aperture than they are with the shutter. And the reason for that is the aperture helps us control how much of an image is in focus. Scenic photographers want everything in focus from the front to the very end, so they want a small aperture value, and the shutter can do whatever it wants to do because the camera's on the tripod. And portrait photographers want sort of the opposite of that. They want a nice clear image of somebody's face, but they want the background to fall out of focus, and the aperture helps us do that. So scenic photographers and portrait photographers care about the aperture. Well, people that deal with motion, specifically sports photographers, they care about the shutter because the shutter controls motion. It either freezes motion or it shows motion because the shutter controls the duration of time, how long light comes into a camera. So if you want to shoot somebody dunking a basketball or a race car or a bicycle going by, you care about your shutter speed, and the aperture can do whatever it wants to do, and you're probably still going to be happy. That's the beginning point. We're going to delve into both of those things in future episodes. In fact, we're going to delve into all of this over a series of episodes. The next episode, we're going to talk about depth of field and the aperture and all the things that it does and how the aperture affects your lens choices. So you'll learn how to buy the proper lens for your needs. Then we're going to talk about the shutter speeds. We're going to understand stops, how everything works.
So here we just came to know that the three things, if I put my camera on shutter priority mode or your aperture priority mode. So what camera will do? Camera will understand these two particular factors, and it will allow me to judge that approximately, ideally, this much should be your aperture. So camera always tells me that if I put shutter or ISO constant, so how much my aperture level should be. Like in the final image, I will get a darkness or I will get a that is overexposed. So like in your camera, if you go and check your LCD, so we came to see like there is a exposure meter kind of thing which you will able to see in camera. This kind of particular image has been placed. So in your LCD also you will be able to see. So if right.
Yes.
So if the 0 is there, means you have the perfect exposure in your image. If that sign is showing in the negative side, so I have to make an understanding of that particular three factors, and I have to do the setting. So my exposure will be at a 0, like that equation which we saw as of now.
Okay.
So always try that my exposure should be at 0. If it is more than 0, then again I will get a much light in my image. If it is lower than the 0, so I will get a less light, that is the underexposed image, darker image I will get. So depending upon these three things, I have to judge that when I'm doing the settings, looking at the exposure meter, I will be able to know that okay, so my final image will be like overexposed or underexposed. So always this image, that this meter gets changed. So just try to on your camera now, put the mode as a manual mode and half press the button. So in the viewfinder you will be able to see that the exposure meter, and when you are half pressing that button, so it will allow you to see that the option which is below that 0 or upper that 0.
So it is not coming, only in this it is coming. In the big screen it is coming.
Okay, big screen it is coming. In the viewfinder it is not coming. Okay.
But it is not on when I am shooting.
Yeah, because when you will shoot, the LCD will get off.
Yeah.
Right? There is a now.
After that, I have to.
Right. So when you are shooting, so in viewfinder you will be able to see, sir. In viewfinder always it shows the exposure meter. From the viewfinder, just see the image when you are shooting, and it will allow you to understand what is your exposure meter.
07 it is showing.
Okay, 07. So it is underexposed image. So I have to make my setting like this. So I will get a final result on a 0. So that always allow me to understand that ideally which settings I should go with. Okay. So this the exposure triangle which we saw. Then the topics comes which is a depth of field, like a depth of field, exactly what it's all about and how we can get a proper depth of field in my particular image. Okay, so just I will open one notes which will help us to understand. So what is the exactly depth of field means? The depth of field of the lens is the zone of sharpness in front or behind of a subject at which the lens is focused. Means if I'm shooting my with camera with if I'm shooting any subject with my camera, so the subject will be in a sharp and the background will be blur. So that is called as a depth of field. It always depends upon three factors. So the three factors are there which will determine that how much blur background I will get in my final image. So we will study that three factors just to understand what exactly the depth of field means. The depth of field is the amount of blur background in your image. Like here you can see the two subjects, that the player and two soccer player, and the background is totally blur. So I will be not able to find out that here is the player, but he's a what he's doing or what kind of
Yeah.
activity is that doing. But in this second image, I'm getting the subject in a sharp, but again my background is not that much blur. So I'm able
Yeah.
to see like there is a man who is using his hand. There is another
Yes.
photographer who is capturing. So why this has been happened? Just because my lens which I'm using, then again the aperture level, and third the distance which we will go just we will see now. So because of that three factors, I will be able to determine that how much blur background I should want. So if I want a much blur background, so I will morely focus on the depth of field, and I will use that button which is in your camera body, which we saw in the first lecture. That below your lens release button, on the opposite side function button is there, and function button is there, and below that there is a one small button which will help you to understand when you are shooting that how much blur background you will get. So just as of now, we will study that what exactly the depth of field means. It always depends on the three factors. First is your focal length of the lens. Focal length means your lens is a big lens right now which you have, right? So it will allow you to capture from 55 mm up to 200 mm.
200.
So my lens focal length is 55 mm to 200 mm. So it's my focal length of the lens.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, say suppose I am switching my camera to the prime lens. So I have a prime lens, say suppose which is a 50 mm constant. So I will be able to determine my focal length of the lens is a 50 mm. If I am capturing the image with using a 24 mm lens, which is a constant lens, so my focal length of the lens will be like 24 mm. So you know that what is the focal length? Now we understood the focal length means the mentioning that mention we can say the minimum distance where I can shoot like a 55 mm, and the maximum distance where I can shoot using that lens, which is a 200 mm. So in zoom lenses, always you will be having the two factors, that minimum one and a higher one. In the prime lenses, there are constant lenses because I can't zoom them. So that will be constant lens. So first factor, which is the focal length of your lens. Second factor, that is the distance between the object and the lens. So here, what exactly it all about, that say suppose I am a person, I am shooting a portrait image, and if my person is 2 feet far away from my camera, so my distance between the subject and my camera is a 2 feet. Like you capture that image which is a chair was there, and your camera which was placed 2.5 feet away from that particular chair. So the distance between your camera and the object is the your second parameter which we saw as of now. So focal length means your lens entirely focal length, which is your always mentioned in the mm, that 55 200 1855. Then your second factor which comes like a distance between your object and the lens. So if an object is too much closer, so I will be able to get much blur background. But say suppose this, the object is too much far away from me, like in a landscape photography. So in landscape photography, entire natural elements are there and the wider area is there. So in that case, I will be able to capture entire sharp image. And the third factor, which is the aperture. So we saw that wider the aperture, more light will come into your camera and you will get a much blur background. If my aperture is too much low, like a 1.4, 1 or a 1.2, and if my aperture is higher, that is a 5.6, 8 or 11, so I will be able to get a sharper image. So in my that image, my background and my foreground will be the same. So I will get entire sharp image. So now you will just understood that how it works. Like here, the effect of the depth of field. So if my aperture is very small, that my aperture is very small, sorry, my aperture is very big, which is always a number like f11 or f18. So what will happen? Too much less light will get captured in the camera. Okay. Then second factor, that is a camera to subject distance. Like here, my camera is placed and my subject is the same distance. In both the cases, the camera and the distance between the subject is the same. But the third factor, which is the focal length of the lens. Okay, just yeah. Here we can see the focal length means the lens which is attached to the camera. So here you can see the lens is a small lens and here the lens is a big lens. So if my lens is a small lens which is having a small focal length of the lens, like a 50 or 24 constant lens, and if my subject is the same and if my aperture is a too much slow, so I will be get a deeper depth of field, means I will be getting the result like this. Okay, yeah, here. So here, so I will be get a deeper depth of field. Like ये मेरा जो इमेज शो कर रहा है जहाँ पर एकदम बहुत ज्यादा ब्लर बैकग्राउंड है, सो आई विल बी गेट अ मच डीपर बैकग्राउंड ब्लर. अगेन इफ माय लेंस, फोकल लेंथ मेरा बहुत ज्यादा है लेंस का, सब्जेक्ट का मैंने डिस्टेंस उतना ही रखा. इफ माय aperture level is too much low, that is light is coming too much in my camera, so my result will be shallower depth of field, which will result in this kind of situation. तो अभी हमेशा ध्यान में रखना है कि जो हमारा डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड है, डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड 3 अलग अलग चीजों के ऊपर मतलब डिपेंड होता है. फर्स्ट इज योर फोकल लेंथ ऑफ योर कैमरा, सेकंड होगा आपका अपर्चर लेवल, थर्ड हो गया आपका डिस्टेंस बिटवीन द ऑब्जेक्ट एंड योर कैमरा. ये 3 चीजें हम लोगों ने ध्यान में रखी. अब जब मैं कोई सब्जेक्ट शूट कर रहा हूँ, मेरा अपर्चर बहुत मैंने ओपन किया है, मतलब बहुत कम नंबर पे मेरा अपर्चर रखा है, तो मुझे जो बैकग्राउंड ब्लर है बहुत ज्यादा मिलेगा. लाइक हियर कि यहाँ पे मेरा अपर्चर लेवल बहुत कम है, मेरा जो कैमरा और सब्जेक्ट के बीच में जो डिस्टेंस है वो एक पर्टिकुलर डिस्टेंस है, लेकिन बैकग्राउंड जो है मेरा, ये जो बैकग्राउंड है मेरे सब्जेक्ट से बहुत दूर है, तो इसकी वजह से मेरा बैकग्राउंड बहुत ब्लर हो पाया है. यहाँ पर सेम सब्जेक्ट है, यहाँ पर मैंने क्या किया कि मेरा बैकग्राउंड को मैंने ज्यादा ब्लर नहीं कर सका बिकॉज मैंने अपर्चर लेवल थोड़ा इंक्रीज कर दिया. तो उसमें क्या हुआ, अपर्चर लेवल इंक्रीज करने की वजह से मेरा बैकग्राउंड एंड फोरग्राउंड मुझे थोड़ा सा सिमिलर काइंड ऑफ थिंग दिखाई दे रहा है. तो वो मुझे हमेशा ध्यान में रखना है कि व्हेन आई वांट दिस काइंड ऑफ रिजल्ट व्हिच इज अ शॉर्टर डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड, सो आई हैव टू पुट माय कैमरा इन अ लो aperture mode, like smaller number of aperture, which will allow me to get much lower background blur. And if I want a entire sharp image, so I will do the aperture level which is the highest one, and I will get the image like this. So my my background and the foreground will be having the blur effect, but not that much. मैं अभी और एक हम लोग वीडियो प्ले करेंगे जहाँ पर ये हमें अंडरस्टैंड करने के लिए इजी होगा that how the depth of field works.
Hey guys and welcome back to another video. आज हम एक बहुत टेक्निकल टर्म के बारे में बात करने वाले हैं. सो ये थोड़ा बिगिनर फोटोग्राफर्स सेंट्रिक वीडियो रहेगा. मैं जिस टर्म की बात कर रहा हूँ वो है डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड. अब डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड फोटोग्राफी टर्म्स में काफ़ी इंपॉर्टेंट चीज़ है, तो इसको हम थोड़ा इजीली समझ लेते हैं. सबसे पहला क्वेश्चन आता है कि डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड होता क्या है. अब डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड बेसिकली सिंपल टर्म्स में होता है जो आपका सब्जेक्ट है जिस पे आप फोकस करते हो, उसके आगे और पीछे कितना एरिया फोकस में रहता है, उस एरिया को हम डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड बोलते हैं. सो अगर आप ये सैंपल देखोगे इसमें डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड कम है बिकॉज सब्जेक्ट के आगे और पीछे ज्यादा एरिया फोकस में नहीं है. वही आप ये सैंपल देखोगे इसमें सब्जेक्ट के आगे और पीछे काफी एरिया फोकस में आ रहा है, तो यहाँ पे हमारी डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड काफी ज्यादा है. अब यूजुअली डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड 2 तरह की रहती हैं. एक डीप डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड होती है, एक शैलो डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड. डीप डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड का मतलब जब डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड काफी ज्यादा रहती है, सब्जेक्ट के आगे और पीछे काफी एरिया फोकस में रहता है. दूसरा जो मैंने बताया शैलो डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड, यहाँ पे डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड बहुत कम रहती है, मतलब सब्जेक्ट के आगे और पीछे कम एरिया फोकस में रहेगा, मतलब आपको ज्यादा ब्लर इफेक्ट मिलेगा. अब सबसे पहले अगर मैं शैलो डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड की बात करूं ये हम किन सिचुएशंस में यूज करेंगे? जहाँ पे हमें ज्यादा ब्लर इफेक्ट चाहिए, पोर्ट्रेट्स, कैंडिड्स या कुछ भी ऐसी फोटोज, मैक्रो फोटोग्राफी जहाँ पे हमें ब्लर इफेक्ट ज्यादा चाहिए, वहाँ हम शैलो डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड रखेंगे। अब डीप डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड हम कहाँ पे यूज करेंगे? लैंडस्केप फोटोग्राफी, सिटीस्केप, सनसेट्स, बिल्डिंग्स, मॉन्यूमेंट्स, ऐसी चीजें जहाँ पे हमें ज्यादा चीजें फोकस में चाहिए, वहाँ पे हम डीप डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड का यूज करेंगे। अब क्वेश्चन आता है कि ये जो डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड है, ज्यादा करना या कम करना, ये हम कैसे कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं? सो ये आप अपनी कैमरा सेटिंग्स को यूज करके कर सकते हो। 4 ऐसी चीजें हैं, 4 फैक्टर्स हैं जिनके बेसिस पे आप डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड को ज्यादा या कम कर सकते हो। अब सबसे पहला और बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट फैक्टर जो डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड को अफेक्ट करता है वो है एपर्चर वैल्यू या एफ नंबर। एफ नंबर जितना कम रहेगा, मतलब f2.8 या f1.8, ऐसी एपर्चर वैल्यूज पे आपकी डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड बहुत कम हो जाती है, मतलब आपको ब्लर इफेक्ट ज्यादा मिलता है। तो अगर आपको डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड कम रखनी है, ब्लर इफेक्ट ज्यादा चाहिए, आप एफ नंबर जितना कम हो सके उतना रखोगे। अगर आपका लेंस का मिनिमम एफ नंबर 3.5 है, आप ट्राई करोगे आप 3.5 पे शूट करो। वही दूसरी चीज आती है कि जब आपको डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड ज्यादा चाहिए, आपको ज्यादा एरिया फोकस में चाहिए, वहां पे आप अपना एफ नंबर बढ़ाते जाओगे। f11, f16, f22 ऐसी एपर्चर वैल्यूज पे जब आप जाते हो तो आपकी डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड बढ़ती जाती है और आपको ज्यादा एरिया फोकस में मिलता रहता है सब्जेक्ट के आगे और पीछे। सेकेंड फैक्टर की अगर मैं बात करूं, वो है आपकी फोकल लेंथ। फोकल लेंथ भी काफी इंपॉर्टेंट है डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड को सेट करने के लिए। तो फोकल लेंथ आपका जितना वाइड रहेगा उतनी आपकी डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड भी ज्यादा रहेगी। अगर आप वाइड एंगल पे शूट कर रहे हो, 18 mm, 24 mm, 10 mm, बहुत ज्यादा वाइड जब आप शूट करते हो तो आपकी जो डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड है वो भी ज्यादा हो जाती है। मतलब अगर आप वाइड शूट करोगे तो आपको ज्यादा एरिया फोकस में मिलेगा सब्जेक्ट के आगे और पीछे। वही अगर आपको डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड,
अभी यहाँ पर जो उन्होंने कहा है ना 10 mm का लेंस या फिर 24 या फिर ना 18 mm, ये सारे कांस्टेंट लेंस होते हैं सर। और अगर मेरे पास 1855 mm का लेंस है जो किट लेंस होता है कैमरा के साथ में हमें जो मिलता है, तो मेरा 18 mm मेरा स्मॉलर अमाउंट है। जैसे अभी आपके लेंस में मिनिमम फोकल लेंथ आपका है वो 55 mm है, मैक्सिमम फोकल लेंथ आपका है वो 200 mm। तो जो आपका लेंस है वो हमें ध्यान में रखना है। मेरे पास अगर एक ही लेंस अवेलेबल है सो आई विल ट्राई कि जो लेंस है उसके साथ में मुझे शूट करना है। लेकिन अगर मेरे पास लेंसेस अलग अलग है तो मैं हमेशा ट्राई करूंगा कि जो स्मॉलर नंबर है जैसे 10 mm या फिर 18 mm, तो वो मुझे वाइडर एंगल देता है, मतलब बहुत ज्यादा एरिया में कैप्चर कर पाता हूँ। तो आई विल सिलेक्ट दैट पर्टिकुलर लेंस फॉर माय डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड अगर मुझे ज्यादा ब्लर चाहिए तो।
कम करनी है तो आप अपनी फोकल लेंथ को बढ़ाते जाओगे, 50 mm, 85 mm, 100 mm, 200 mm। जितना आपका फोकल लेंथ बढ़ता जाएगा उतनी आपकी डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड कम होती जाएगी, मतलब ब्लर इफेक्ट आपको ज्यादा मिलता जाएगा। तो अभी तक हमने 2 चीजें डिस्कस करी, एपर्चर नंबर और फोकल लेंथ। तो अगर मैं सिंपल टर्म्स में बोलूं आपको ब्लर इफेक्ट ज्यादा चाहिए, आप अपना एफ नंबर कम रखोगे और अपनी फोकल लेंथ ज्यादा रखने का ट्राई करोगे। वही अगर आपको डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड ज्यादा चाहिए, आपको ब्लर इफेक्ट नहीं चाहिए, तो उस सिचुएशन में आप एफ नंबर ज्यादा रखोगे और अपनी फोकल लेंथ को जितना वाइड हो सके उतना रखोगे। अब हम आते हैं थर्ड फैक्टर पे जो अफेक्ट करता है आपकी डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड, वो है कैमरा से सब्जेक्ट का डिस्टेंस। अभी फॉर एग्जांपल मैं ये वीडियो बना रहा हूँ, मैं कैमरा से पास हूँ तो यहाँ पे ब्लर इफेक्ट ज्यादा मिल रहा है, मैं F2 पे हूँ। वही अगर मैं पीछे जाता रहूंगा, अभी मैं ऑलमोस्ट बैकग्राउंड के पास पहुंच गया हूँ, अब आपको दिखेगा कि ब्लर इफेक्ट थोड़ा कम हो रहा है। सो यही चीज है जो थर्ड फैक्टर है कि आप कैमरा और सब्जेक्ट के बीच में जितना कम डिस्टेंस रखोगे उतना आपका डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड कम रहेगा, मतलब ब्लर इफेक्ट ज्यादा मिलेगा। जैसे जैसे डिस्टेंस बढ़ता जाएगा आपकी डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड भी बढ़ेगी और ब्लर इफेक्ट कम होता जाएगा। अब फोर्थ और लास्ट फैक्टर जो डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड को अफेक्ट करता है वो है सब्जेक्ट टू बैकग्राउंड का डिस्टेंस। तो मेरे और सब्जेक्ट में जितना डिस्टेंस ज्यादा रहेगा उतना आपकी डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड कम रहेगी, मतलब ब्लर इफेक्ट ज्यादा रहेगा। अभी मेरे और बैकग्राउंड में डिस्टेंस ज्यादा है तो आपको ब्लर इफेक्ट दिख रहा होगा। अभी अगेन अगर मैं पीछे जाता हूँ, अभी मैं ऑलमोस्ट इस एरिया के साथ में हूँ, तो अब जो ब्लर इफेक्ट है वो कम हो गया है, बिकॉज बैकग्राउंड और मेरे में जो डिस्टेंस है वो काफी कम हो गया। तो अगर आपको ब्लर इफेक्ट ज्यादा चाहिए, आप बैकग्राउंड और सब्जेक्ट का डिस्टेंस ज्यादा रखोगे। अगर आपको ब्लर इफेक्ट इतना ज्यादा नहीं चाहिए तो आप ट्राई करोगे कि जो आपका सब्जेक्ट है और आपका जो बैकग्राउंड है उसका डिस्टेंस कम होता जाए। तो ये 4 फैक्टर्स हैं जिनको यूज करके आप अपनी डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड को कम या ज़्यादा कर सकते हो। सो आई होप ये वीडियो आपके लिए हेल्पफुल था, इन्फॉर्मेटिव था, कुछ नया सीखने को मिला। अगर था तो डू हिट द लाइक बटन, शेयर करना अपने फ्रेंड्स के साथ एंड सब।
अभी जब हम लोग कोई वेडिंग शूट कर रहे हैं या फिर जहाँ पर मैं ग्रुप इमेज ले रहा हूँ, तो मैं हमेशा लोगों को कहता हूँ कि सर आप ना थोड़ा आगे आइए स्टेज से। तो क्या होता है, जब स्टेज से पर्सन सामने आ गया रहता है तो उसका जो बैकग्राउंड है थोड़ा सा डिस्टेंस मुझे मिलता है। तो इन दैट इमेज मेरा जो एफ नंबर है मैं ज्यादा रखता हूँ, बिकॉज मुझे सारे के सारे जो पर्सन है ग्रुप इमेज में उनको फोकस में रखना है। प्लस मुझे थोड़ा सा ब्लर एरिया मिलेगा जहाँ पर बैकग्राउंड मेरा एकदम सटीक के नहीं है। मतलब मेरा बैकग्राउंड जैसे पर्सन खड़ा है और दीवार से सटकर पर्सन खड़ा है तो मेरा बैकग्राउंड कुछ है ही नहीं। दीवार से एकदम सटके पर्सन खड़ा है तो मेरा मुझे ब्लर कुछ भी नहीं मिलेगा। तो वही अगर दीवार से 1 या 2 फीट पर्सन आगे आके खड़ा रहता है लाइक अ स्टेज, तो थोड़ा सा ब्लर इफेक्ट भी मिलेगा। और मेरा एफ नंबर ज्यादा होने की वजह से मुझे मैक्सिमम लोग हैं उनके ऊपर फोकस करने के लिए मिलेगा। सेम ऑपोजिट सिचुएशन जहाँ पर मैं मॉडल शूट कर रहा हूँ, कोई जैसे पर्टिकुलर पोर्टफोलियो शूट कर रहा हूँ किसी मॉडल का, तो व्हाट आई विल डू कि मुझे अभी यहाँ पर सिर्फ जो मॉडल है उसको ही फोकस में रखना है, बाकी बैकग्राउंड हमेशा मुझे बहुत ही ब्लर चाहिए। तो मैं वहाँ पर इस तरीके की सिचुएशन या फिर इस तरीके की लोकेशन इस तरीके की लोकेशन में देखूंगा जहाँ पर मेरा बैकग्राउंड जो है मेरे सब्जेक्ट से बहुत दूर है। लाइक अगर मैं पोर्ट्रेट इमेज कोई भी इमेज देखता हूँ तो हमेशा हम लोग ट्राई करते हैं कि स्टूडियो हम लोग ट्राई करें। स्टूडियो में हो रहा है तो कोई इशू नहीं, लेकिन अगर आउटडोर शूट है मेरा तो आउटडोर शूट में इस तरीके से बैकग्राउंड हम लोग देखते हैं जहाँ पर नेचुरल चीजें हैं और नेचुरल चीजों में बैकग्राउंड बहुत ज्यादा ब्लर हो जाता है। जैसे अगर इस केस में मैं देखूँ तो यहाँ पर मैंने एक मॉडल को सामने रख दिया, जो मेरा बैकग्राउंड है वो बहुत ज्यादा दूर है मेरे सब्जेक्ट से, तो उसकी वजह से मुझे ब्लर इफेक्ट जो है बहुत ज्यादा मिला। लाइक हियर मैं अगर यहाँ पर जैसे मैंने मॉडल को कहा कि रोड के सेंटर में आप खड़े रहिए, तो मुझे ब्लर बैकग्राउंड मिला। अगर मैं मॉडल को कहता हूँ कि किसी दीवार के यहाँ पर उनको खड़ा रहना है, तो जो दीवार है और मॉडल का जो डिस्टेंस है वो कम हो जाएगा। सो आई विल बी गेट द रिजल्ट वेयर माई मॉडल ऑल्सो विल बी इन अ फोकस in a sharp image, and again my background like that entire wall it will be a sharp। तो मेरा जो रिजल्ट है वो थोड़ा चेंज हो जाएगा। लाइक हियर अभी यहाँ पर जो ये पेड़ है, पेड़ भी फोकस में शो कर रहा है बिकॉज सेम डिस्टेंस पे मेरे मॉडल और जो पेड़ है जो ऑब्जेक्ट है वो आया है। लेकिन मैं हमेशा ट्राई करूंगा कि जो बैकग्राउंड है वो थोड़ा दूर रहे मेरे मॉडल से। तो आप जो भी पोर्ट्रेट फोटोग्राफी वगैरह देखोगे ना, हमेशा आपको ऐसे काइंड के इमेजेस मिलेंगे जहां पर उनका बैकग्राउंड बहुत ज्यादा ब्लर है, एंड इन पोर्ट्रेट इट इज रिक्वायर्ड। सो देन दैट इमेजेस लुक्स वेरी नाइस। इफ माय बैकग्राउंड एंड फोरग्राउंड आर टू मच इक्वल लाइक लैंडस्केप फोटोग्राफी, तो उसमें पोर्ट्रेट का वो लुक नहीं रहता। सो इन पोर्ट्रेट फोटोग्राफी मेरा हमेशा ट्राई करना है मुझे कि मेरा अपर्चर का जो लेंस है, सॉरी जो लेंस का अपर्चर है बहुत कम हो, लाइक मैं एकदम बहुत ज्यादा ब्लर कर सकूं, and I will be getting the images like this kind of। अभी ये मेरा स्टूडियो इमेजेस है, स्टूडियो में बैकग्राउंड एक 2-2.5 फीट से मेरा दूर है, बट अगेन बिकॉज ऑफ दैट स्टूडियो लाइट एंड ऑल आई एम एबल टू कैप्चर द मच ब्लर बैकग्राउंड। तो ये सारी चीजें होती है। जैसे यहाँ पर अभी ये जो दीवार है, तो दीवार इससे डायरेक्टली कनेक्टेड है, सो दैट्स द रीजन हियर आई एम एबल टू ब्लर सम काइंड ऑफ पर्टिकुलर पोर्शन ऑफ दैट बैक वॉल, बट आई एम नॉट एबल टू कंट्रोल द एंटायर ब्लर बैकग्राउंड। तो यहाँ पर मैं आइडेंटिफाई कर पा रहा हूँ टेक्सचर वगैरह। इसको मुझे एकदम ब्लर चाहिए तो मुझे क्या करना होगा, मुझे ऐसी चीज देखनी पड़ेगी जहाँ पर मेरा बैकग्राउंड है ही नहीं या फिर बहुत दूर है मेरे सब्जेक्ट से। तो ये मुझे ध्यान में रखना है। जैसे हियर यहाँ पर आपका बैकग्राउंड जो है पूरा कंटिन्यूअसली कनेक्टेड है आपके सब्जेक्ट के ऊपर, तो इसकी वजह से जो आपका ये शैडो है आपके जो दीवार पे दिखाई दे रहा है वो मुझे डायरेक्टली इमेज में भी शो कर रहा है। तो हमें ध्यान में रखना है कि मैं किस तरीके की फोटोग्राफी कर रहा हूँ, जहाँ पर मुझे एग्जैक्टली रिजल्ट किस तरीके का चाहिए, एंड अकॉर्डिंग टू दैट आई विल सिलेक्ट ऑब्जेक्ट्स, आई विल सिलेक्ट द एलिमेंट्स और मेरा इक्विपमेंट्स, उस तरीके से मैं क्लिक करूंगा। ओके तो ये डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड हमने सीखा। अभी ये जो इमेज है इसको भी बहुत ज्यादा ना, मतलब फोटोग्राफी फील्ड में इस इमेज को बहुत ज्यादा आइडेंटिफाई किया गया था। तो ये जो पर्टिकुलर इमेज लिया गया था, इसको जैसे सिलेक्शंस होता है कंपनी के, बहुत सारे कॉम्पिटिटिव एग्जाम्स होते हैं फोटोग्राफी के, ऑनलाइन कॉम्पिटिटिव एग्जाम, लाइक देयर इज अ lensculpture.com। तो वो वहाँ पर आप आपके इमेजेस, आपका जो काम है हम लोग यहाँ पे अपलोड करते हैं, then we get a exposure like the international juries there, they examine our images, they provide their expert review on our images like that. तो ये इमेज उसमें बहुत ज्यादा यूज किया गया था 2018 या 2019 के टाइम का। तो बहुत सारे ऐसे इमेजेस है पोर्ट्रेट में जहाँ पर हमें जरूरत लगती है, एंड इज अगेंस्ट 90% ऑफ द पोर्ट्रेट वी ट्राई टू शूट इन द स्टूडियो लाइट, सो आई एम एबल टू मैनिपुलेट द लाइट। लेकिन अगर मैं आउटडोर में शूट कर रहा हूँ तो मुझे इस तरीके से उसका टोटल बैकग्राउंड या फिर जो टाइम है मुझे शूट करने का, जैसे यहाँ पर मेरा जो टाइमिंग है ये मॉर्निंग का टाइमिंग हो सकता है या फिर इवनिंग का टाइमिंग, बट आई विल अवॉइड टू शूट इन अ डायरेक्ट सनलाइट लाइक इन आफ्टरनून। तो आफ्टरनून में लाइट ज्यादा हार्श होता है तो वहां पर मैं अवॉइड करूंगा। मैं मॉर्निंग का जो सॉफ्ट लाइट है तब मैं ट्राई करूंगा शूट करने का, या फिर इवनिंग का जो सॉफ्ट लाइट है 4 o'clock के बाद में तब मैं शूट करने के लिए ट्राई करूंगा। तो ये डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड हमने आज देखा। आज हमने 2 चैप्टर देखे, एक देखा हमने एक्सपोजर ट्रायंगल जो हमें पता चलेगा, सेकेंड हमने देखा डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड। डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड में मुझे ब्लर बैकग्राउंड कितना होगा। अभी नेक्स्ट टॉपिक जो है वो आपका कंपोजिशन। कंपोजिशन मतलब क्या कि जो मैं फ्रेम मतलब जो मेरा इमेज है उस इमेज में मैं जो कुछ भी कैप्चर कर रहा हूँ उसको मुझे कहाँ पर प्लेस करना है। जो हम लोग कहते हैं ना सब्जेक्ट का अरेंजमेंट, लाइक इफ आई एम शूटिंग अ पोर्ट्रेट और इफ आई एम शूटिंग एनी प्रोडक्ट शूट, तो वहां पर मुझे सारी चीजें ऑर्गेनाइज तरीके से रखनी है ताकि जो मेरा फाइनल इमेज है वो मुझे प्रॉपर शो करे। तो वो कंपोजिशन एग्जैक्टली होता क्या है, और फोटोग्राफी में कंपोजिशन बहुत मायने रखता है। एनी काइंड ऑफ फोटोग्राफी जहाँ पर आप वाइल्ड लाइफ कर रहे हो या फिर पोर्ट्रेट शूट कर रहे हो या फिर आप लैंडस्केप शूट कर रहे हो, कहीं पर भी आपका कंपोजिशन बहुत ज्यादा मैटर करता है, बिकॉज वो हमें एक पर्सपेक्टिव देता है कि मुझे जो शो करना है मेरे इमेज में मैं वो शो कर सकता हूँ। लाइक एवरी फोटोग्राफर्स ऑलवेज ट्राई टू टेल अस सम स्टोरी थ्रू हिज इमेजेस। तो वो स्टोरी कब मैं लोगों को बता सकूं, जब मेरे लेंस से जो मैं कैप्चर कर रहा हूँ तो वहां पे कुछ इस तरीके से कैप्चर करूँ जो सब्जेक्ट का प्लेसिंग है कि मुझे ये सब्जेक्ट मेरे लेंस मेरे जो फाइनल इमेज में मुझे इस साइड चाहिए या मुझे इस साइड चाहिए, वो डिटरमाइन करना पड़ता है। दैट इज एंटायरली कॉल्ड एज अ कंपोजिशन। सो कंपोजिशन जो है वो हम लोग अभी स्टडी करें या नेक्स्ट चैप्टर में स्टडी करें?
कैसे भी चलेगा।
ओके, सो हम लोग ना इसको देख लेते हैं कंपोजिशन एग्जैक्टली क्या होता है। कंपोजिशन मीन्स इट्स एन अरेंजिंग ऑफ ऑल विजुअल एलिमेंट्स इन द फ्रेम इन अ वे दैट मेक्स अ इमेज अ सैटिस्फैक्टरी एंड अ कंप्लीट होल। तो जो भी मैं कैप्चर कर रहा हूँ मेरे कैमरा से, तो उसमें जो मुझे दिखाई दे रहा है, जितना मेरा इमेज कैप्चर होगा उस फ्रेम में मुझे सारी चीजें दिखाई दे रही है। तो मुझे अभी मेरा कैमरा जो क्लिक करूंगा उसका कहाँ पर एंगल करना है। मैं हमेशा कभी हम लोग बोलते हैं, ये वर्ड आपने सुना होगा कि कैमरा एंगल चेंज कर, मतलब क्या कि आपका कंपोजिशन जो है वो चेंज करना है। तो कंपोजिशन में मुझे पता चलेगा एंड आई विल बी एबल टू टेल द व्यूअर ऑफ माय पर्टिकुलर इमेज दैट व्हाट आई हैव कैप्चर्ड एंड व्हाट आई वांट टू कन्वे थ्रू माय इमेज। So like here, the subject is what you want as a your viewer to see first when they look at your image. तो कोई भी इमेज में जब देखता हूँ तो मुझे एक उसमें पर्टिकुलर ऐसी चीज होती है जो मेरी आंखें उस तरीके से पटा मतलब डायरेक्टली वहां पे अट्रैक्ट हो जाती है। सो कंपोजिशन में एक रूल जो है बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट विच इज कॉल्ड एज द रूल ऑफ थर्ड। तो रूल ऑफ थर्ड मतलब क्या कि जो मेरा स्क्रीन है, मेरा जो एलसीडी है या फिर मेरा जो कैमरा का व्यू पॉइंटर है, it always gets divided with the some lines which is called as a grid lines. तो ये rule of third मतलब क्या? The most basic guideline in photography which explain that where to place your subject in the image. अभी जैसे अगर मेरा particular image है, if I am shooting vertically, if I am camera shooting like this, so I will be having that lines. If I divide my entire screen in 6 equal parts, so I have 4 intersection points that is called as grid lines. जब आप कैमरा का सेटिंग से वहां पर ग्रिड लाइन करके एक सेटिंग होता है, हम लोग अभी थोड़ी देर में देखेंगे वो। तो ग्रिड लाइन मतलब क्या कि आप जब शूट कर रहे हो ना, आपको आपके जो स्क्रीन के ऊपर ऐसे लाइंस दिखाई देंगे जैसे इस तरीके का। तो मुझे अंडरस्टैंड करने के लिए इजी हो जाएगा कि मेरा जो इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट है वहां पर मुझे सब्जेक्ट प्लेस करना है। लाइक ये जो 4 पॉइंट्स है, तो 4 पॉइंट पे मुझे ध्यान में रखना है कि कहाँ पर मेरा सब्जेक्ट जो है मुझे प्लेस करना है। जैसे अभी ये इमेज में कैप्चर कर रहा हूँ, इट्स अ वाइड लैंडस्केप फोटो, लैंडस्केप सिचुएशन इज देयर। मेरा जो लाइट सोर्स है, लाइट हाउस जो है मेरा, ये हमेशा ट्राई करूंगा मैं कि कौन से भी एक क्वाड्रेंट में, लाइक दिस इज योर लेफ्ट हैंड साइड अपर क्वाड्रेंट, दिस इज योर अपर साइड मिडल क्वाड्रेंट एंड दिस इज योर राइट हैंड साइड अपर क्वाड्रेंट। तो मेरा हमेशा इमेज जो है मैं कौन से भी दो जो पॉइंट है इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट वहां पर प्लेस करने की कोशिश करूंगा। बिकॉज ऑफ दैट माई इमेज लुक्स मच बेटर। अगर मान लीजिए ये जो लाइट सोर्स है ये मैं यहाँ पर सेंटर में प्लेस करता और मैं इमेज क्लिक करता तो वो थोड़ा सा अलग ही दिखाई देता, बिकॉज सब्जेक्ट वही था लेकिन देखने का नजरिया ही चेंज हो गया। तो वो हमेशा होता है कि मैं जब कोई कैमरा से इमेज क्लिक कर रहा हूँ तब मुझे कैमरा जो है किस तरीके से पकड़ना है और मुझे जो इमेज शो कर रहा हूँ, मुझे इमेज जो मुझे कैप्चर करना है उसका फाइनल रिजल्ट कैसे होगा। तो ये हमारा बैकग्राउंड स्टडी होता है कोई भी इमेज में जब देखता हूँ। लाइक अगर मान लीजिए इस इमेज में मैं देख रहा हूँ तो मुझे डायरेक्टली मेरा जो आई अटेंशन है वो जाता है लाइट हाउस के ऊपर। अभी ये लाइट हाउस में एकदम यहाँ पे कॉर्नर में डाल दूं तो फिर मेरा एंटायर इमेज खाली फ्रेम हो जाएगा, क्योंकि मेरा जो दिखने का पार्ट है सिर्फ इतना सा पार्ट है। तो मैंने अभी लाइट हाउस को इस तरीके से प्लेस किया जो मैंने अपर साइड में, so because of that I am able to see there is a lots of distance। तो मैं डिस्टेंस भी देख पा रहा हूँ जहाँ से मेरे कैमरा पर्सन ने क्लिक किया है, तो आई एम एबल टू सी द डिस्टेंस एंड द लाइट हाउस। अगर ये लाइट हाउस मेरा यहाँ पर होता देन अगेन आई विल बी एबल टू सी मच मोर स्काई, बिकॉज मेरा जो स्काई है वो ज्यादा कैप्चर आ जाएगा फ्रेम में। तो वो डिपेंड करता है। ऑलवेज ट्राई टू सेट योर सब्जेक्ट ऑन पर्टिकुलर वन इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट और टू इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट। ये जो इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट्स है इसमें हमें हमेशा ध्यान में रखना है कि मेरा जो सब्जेक्ट है वो दो इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट्स को ही कैप्चर करे। लाइक हियर जैसे इस पर्टिकुलर मॉडल शूट है, अभी इसमें जो ये मॉडल को प्लेस किया है मैंने ये दो इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट पे प्लेस किया है। यहाँ पर एक शो कर रहा है और नीचे एक इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट। इस साइड वाला जो एरिया है ब्लर है, तो मुझे पता चलता है कि मेरे जो सब्जेक्ट है बाजू में उसका मूविंग स्पेस मैंने दिया है। अगर मैं इस मॉडल को सेंटर में क्लिक करता तो वो मेरा पर्सपेक्टिव पूरा चेंज हो जाता इमेज का देखने का। तो वो हमारा एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होता है कि मैं जब कोई चीज क्लिक कर रहा हूँ तो मुझे मेरा सब्जेक्ट किस तरीके से प्लेस करना है। लाइक वी विल सी सम मोर एग्जांपल्स अबाउट द कंपोजिशन। यहाँ पर जैसे मैं अगर इस इमेज को क्लिक करता हूँ तो यहाँ पर मेरी जो मॉडल है, मॉडल को मैंने हमेशा यहाँ पर देख सकते हो आप कि जो मेरा ग्रिड है वो मैंने 6 अलग अलग पार्ट में किया। अभी ये ग्रिड लाइंस कैमरा में ऑलरेडी होते हैं। कैमरा में मेन्यू में जब आप जाओगे वहां पर ऑप्शन है ग्रिड लाइंस करके, जैसे आप ऑन करोगे तो आपके व्यू फाइंडर में भी आपको ऐसे लाइंस दिखाई देंगे। आपको जो एलसीडी है उसके ऊपर भी लाइंस दिखाई देंगे। सो विच विल हेल्प यू टू मेक द आइडेंटिफिकेशन ऑफ द इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट और वहां पे आपको आपका सब्जेक्ट प्लेस करना है। लाइक हियर मेरा जो सब्जेक्ट है यहाँ पर मैंने प्लेस किया है, तो बैकग्राउंड जो है मुझे पता चल रहा है कि ये बहुत लंबा रास्ता है जहाँ से मेरा पर्सन वॉक करके आया है। सो आई एम एबल टू कन्वे टू मैसेज इन दैट इमेज। मेरा जो सब्जेक्ट है वो प्लस मेरा जो बैकग्राउंड है उससे भी कुछ एक स्टोरी पता चल रही है। जैसे यहाँ पर मैं देखूं लाइक हियर, अभी यहाँ पर जो मेरा सब्जेक्ट है मैंने राइट हैंड साइड में प्लेस किया है, बिकॉज मेरा जो सब्जेक्ट है वो किस डायरेक्शन में देख रहा है, विच इज कॉल्ड एज योर डायरेक्शन ऑफ मूवमेंट। तो अगर ये पर्सन मेरा लेफ्ट हैंड साइड में देख रहा है तो मुझे वहां पर कुछ स्पेस दिखाना पड़ेगा मेरे इमेज में, ताकि लोगों को पता चले कि मेरा जो सब्जेक्ट है वो किस डायरेक्शन में मूवमेंट करने वाला है, किस डायरेक्शन में बोल रहे हैं। तो ये डायरेक्शन अगेन इज अ मच इम्पोर्टेंट पार्ट। तो ये ध्यान में रखना है हमें एवरीवेयर। लाइक हियर द जोकर हैज बीन प्लेस्ड in that right hand side of the intersection point, and this area I'm able to see. So always try to keep your subject in the second or first quadrant of the image. Like here अभी ये अगर इसको मैं ग्रिड लगाता हूँ तो मुझे जो ये इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट मिलेगा यहाँ पर एक मिलेगा और यहाँ पर एक इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट मिलेगा। तो बिकॉज ऑफ विच अगर मैंने ये सब्जेक्ट यहाँ पर प्लेस किया है तो मुझे यहाँ पर पता चल रहा है कि सब्जेक्ट कहाँ से चल के आया एंड नेक्स्ट उसका डायरेक्शन कौन सा है, तो इस डायरेक्शन में सब्जेक्ट चल के आने वाला है। तो द मच लार्जर एरिया आई एम एबल टू कैप्चर एंड आई कैन शो द डायरेक्शन ऑफ द सब्जेक्ट कि मेरा जो डायरेक्शन किस डायरेक्शन में मेरा सब्जेक्ट आगे मूवमेंट करने वाला है। जैसे कोई भी हम लोग मान लीजिए मैं कोई भी आर्किटेक्चरल फोटोग्राफी कर रहा हूँ, पोर्ट्रेट कर रहा हूँ, ये सब्जेक्ट प्लेस वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल। एंड अगेन आपका कंपोजिशन, लाइक हियर अभी यहाँ पर मेरा लैंडस्केप फोटोग्राफी है, तो लैंडस्केप फोटोग्राफी में मैं सब्जेक्ट इतना कंपोजिशन के ऊपर ध्यान नहीं दूंगा, मुझे ध्यान में रखना है कि मेरा वाइडर एरिया कब से कैप्चर करना है, लेकिन साथ में ये भी ध्यान में रखना है कि जो मुझे दिखाना है, मतलब जो मुझे एक पर्टिकुलर चीज मेरे व्यूअर्स को डायरेक्टली कन्वे होना चाहिए, ये मेरी जो चीज है मुझे ज्यादा प्रॉपर शो करनी है। सो आई विल प्लेस माई सब्जेक्ट अकॉर्डिंग टू दैट। जैसे ये अगर मैं देखता हूँ इस इमेज में, आई हैव वन वॉकिंग डिस्टेंस, सॉरी इसको एक लाइक हम लोग एक ब्रिज टाइप कह सकते हैं जहाँ से मैं वॉक कर सक रहा हूँ। इसको मैं ओपन करता हूँ,
क्रॉसवे।
क्रॉसवे, राइट। सो यहाँ पर जैसे मेरा ब्रिज भी है एंड आई एम एबल टू सी कि मेरा जो वाटर रिफ्लेक्शन है वो, तो मुझे यहाँ पर दो पर्सपेक्टिव दिखाने हैं, एक तो मुझे लैंड दिखाना है एंड आई हैव टू शो द वाटर ऑल्सो। सो व्हाट आई विल डू कि मैंने यहाँ पर मेरा जो सब्जेक्ट है, सब्जेक्ट जो था मेरा, ये दो जो पिलर्स थे उनको मैंने क्रॉस साइड में रखा एंड आई एम एबल टू कैप्चर द मच लार्जर एरिया। तो मेरा जो ये मिडल पोर्शन है यहाँ पर मेरा मेन सब्जेक्ट आ गया, मिडल जो ग्रिड है, एंड अपर ग्रिड में स्काई आ गया, लोअर ग्रिड में मेरा एम्प्टी सब्जेक्ट, एम्प्टी फ्रेम कहते हैं, राइट। तो ये हमेशा हमें ध्यान में रखना है। आई विल आल्सो प्लेस यू सम वीडियो। कैनन का एक वेबिनार हुआ था जहाँ पर वाइल्ड लाइफ फोटोग्राफी होती है, तो वाइल्ड लाइफ फोटोग्राफी अगर मैं कोई कर रहा हूँ तो उस इन दैट केस व्हाई माय कंपोजिशन इज टू मच इम्पोर्टेंट, दैट वी विल सी लाइक हियर वर्कशॉप। सो अभी जिस पर्सन का हमने देखा ना इमेजेस, कुणाल मल्होत्रा, इज अगेन द कोर्स लीडर फॉर अ कैनन इन इंडिया। सो he was telling us the Canon new software, Canon की कंपनी ने एक नया सॉफ्टवेयर लॉन्च किया था, उसके रिलेटेड वेबिनार था। एंड दिस इज आई थिंक ओके, दिस वाज द लेंसेज रिलेटेड टू द, ये अगेन प्रीतेश राव इज द मोस्ट सीनियर पर्सन इन फोटोग्राफी फील्ड, ही इज अ कोर्स लीडर फॉर Canon इन इंडिया। ओके हियर, सो अभी ये पर्सन है सचिन राय, इज अ वाइल्ड लाइफ फोटोग्राफर and he was explaining that how composition is required in wildlife photography, because wildlife photography में भी हमें composition बहुत important role play करता है, जहाँ पर मुझे जो ऑब्जेक्ट है उस ऑब्जेक्ट को लोगों को दिखाना है, लेकिन इस तरीके से कि उसमें स्टोरी कन्वे हो। like we will just place some points of the image, like here the composition. You are able to see the voice, sir?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Now, from the video, no.
Okay, just give me one moment. So I think ये रिकॉर्डिंग है, इसकी वजह से मेरा वॉइस ज़्यादा नहीं, बट आई विल ट्राई टू एक्सप्लेन कि एग्जैक्टली इस इमेज में क्या हो रहा है। जैसे यहाँ पर ये जो उन्होंने इमेज लिया था, अभी रूल ऑफ थर्ड इन्होंने यूज किया था इस इमेज में। तो यहाँ पर क्या है कि उनका कैमरा सेटिंग कौन सा था, कैनन 5D Mark III कैमरा था उनके पास, जो उन्होंने शूट किया है 1740 mm लेंस के ऊपर शूट किया है। अभी 17 mm जो लेंस है वो मुझे बहुत वाइडर एरिया शो करती है। तो इस सब्जेक्ट में क्या हुआ, ये जब वो सब्जेक्ट शूट कर रहे थे, तो वी विल गो अहेड जस्ट यहाँ पर, जैसे अभी यहाँ पर ग्रिड दिखाई दे रहे हैं मुझे, तो मेरे ग्रिड के 4 इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट हुए। अब मुझे जब मेरे लाइंस जो है वो जिस डायरेक्शन में आने वाले हैं, सो विच इज कॉल्ड एज एक्टिव डायरेक्शन ऑफ योर इमेज, सो लाइक दिस इज द वे वेयर द टाइगर और दैट लाइन विल कम। तो उनका जो मूविंग डायरेक्शन है वो मैंने कैप्चर किया। अब मुझे जो एरिया है मच वाइडर शो करना है, जहाँ पर मेरा 90% ऑफ द पार्ट ऑफ द फ्रेम इज योर स्काई। तो यहाँ पर कैसे, मैंने एक मेरा स्काई जो है वो भी मुझे शो करना था, तो मैंने क्या किया, मैंने टाइगर्स को जूम नहीं किया, टाइगर्स को मैंने वाइड एंगल में ही शूट किया, जहाँ तक मेरा वाइड एंगल में मुझे बहुत ज्यादा एरिया कैप्चर करने के लिए मिल रहा है। एंड आई प्लेस माई सब्जेक्ट हियर, बिकॉज ऑफ विच I am able to understand that now in this direction subject will move, and then this direction from where the subject is coming from, वो दोनों स्टोरी मुझे कैप्चर करनी है। अगेन मेरा जो इमेज है वो 2 पार्ट में डिवाइड हो गया है, बिकॉज ऑफ विच आई एम एबल टू सी द ग्रास एंड अगेन आई एम एबल टू सी द स्काई। तो यहाँ पर द फोटोग्राफर्स इंटेंशन वाज लाइक ही वाज टू कन्वे अस लाइक देयर इज अ एंटायर वाइड एरिया एंड हियर आई एम जस्ट एक्सप्रेसिंग द वाइल्ड लाइफ। तो यहाँ पर क्या है कि उन्होंने एक इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट पे ही सब्जेक्ट को प्लेस किया है। सो ऑलवेज वी शुड ट्राई कि जो मेरा सब्जेक्ट है उसको मुझे कोई एक ऐसे पॉइंट पे प्लेस करना है इन 4 अलग अलग इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट में, ताकि मेरा जो इमेज है वो इमेज प्रॉपर शो करे और वो स्टोरी जो मुझे कन्वे करना है वो कन्वे में कर सकूं। जैसे अगर हम लोग नेक्स्ट इमेज को देखते हैं, ओके, तो अभी जैसे यहाँ पर इन्होंने सब्जेक्ट को 2/3 क्वाड्रेंट में दिखा है, जो हम लोगों ने रूल ऑफ थर्ड देखा ना, जिसमें थोड़ा सा उन्होंने फ्रेम के लोअर साइड में सब्जेक्ट को रखा है और यहाँ पर एकदम मिडल में रखा है। So now the person is that object is the same, the background is totally different because यहाँ पर कैमरा उन्होंने थोड़ा सा नीचे ले लिया, तो because of that the grass is able to capture the blur motion और यहाँ पर sky capture हुआ है। तो ये यहाँ पर जो उनको शो करना था, मेरा जो इमेज सेंटर में है और मुझे बैकग्राउंड शो करना है ज्यादा, तो एक कॉन्ट्रास्ट टाइप मुझे इमेज अगर सिचुएशन शो करनी है, सो आई कैन प्ले विद द कंपोजिशन पार्ट। बट इफ आई वांट टू कन्वे द मैसेज और कन्वे द स्टोरी थ्रू माय इमेजेस, so I will try to keep my subject in a such a way, like here I'm able to see कि मेरा जो ये बफेलो का मेन पोर्शन है, जिसका फेस है, वो मुझे लुक कर रहा है। तो व्हेन आई एम वाचिंग दिस एंटायर इमेज, माय इंटेंशन ओनली ऑन द बफेलोज आईज, बिकॉज डायरेक्ट इंटरेक्शन हो रहा है, डायरेक्ट इंटरेक्शन। तो हमें हमेशा ध्यान में रखना है कि कंपोजिशन प्लेज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल। और ये जो वीडियो है, एंटायर जो रिकॉर्डिंग है, दैट आई विल फॉरवर्ड यू। तो आप जब उसको प्रॉपर आपका वॉइस शो करेगा, आई विल जस्ट एडिट, आई विल इंक्रीज द वॉइस एंड आई विल फॉरवर्ड यू along with the lecture, which will help you to understand only composition, because he has mentioned composition for 1 and 5 hours। तो उसमें बहुत वाइल्ड लाइफ में कंपोजिशन कितना मैटर करता है वो जरूरी है। तो here again tiger is there, so I can see the reflection। तो जस्ट ये कंपोजिशन का पूरा खेल है, जहाँ पर मैं लोगों को बता सकता हूँ कि मेरा एग्जैक्टली मुझे क्या शो करना है मेरे इमेज में। लाइक यहाँ पर उन्होंने हाफ टाइगर कैप्चर किया है, बिकॉज जो उन्होंने जूम किया है, जो जूम लेवल ज्यादा है। अब मुझे सिर्फ टाइगर का एग्जैक्ट इंटेंशन बताना है कि अभी उसने वो शिकार किया है और वो अपने कब्स को खिलाने के लिए वो लेकर जा रही है। सो आई जस्ट कट दैट टाइगर इन अ हाफ पार्ट एंड आई कैप्चर्ड ओनली हाफ इमेज। अगर मुझे मैं 1/3 ऑफ द पार्ट, मतलब ये टाइगर और ज्यादा कैप्चर करता, तो देखने वाला ये सोचता कि अभी इतना कैप्चर कर लिया है तो इससे ज्यादा और पूरा टाइगर ही कैप्चर कर लेते। तो वो डिफरेंस होता है कि मुझे कितना शो करना है मेरे इमेज में। ये एक हो गया एग्जांपल। लाइक नाउ ही वाज एक्सप्लेनिंग द क्वेश्चन आंसर, लाइक हियर अगेन he is telling a story, like he kept a tiger on a एकदम लोअर कॉर्नर फ्रेम में, और यहाँ पर जो ये हिरन है, तो now we can see like tiger will jump and he will take a that जो हिरन है उसको शिकार करेगा। so now I am able to see the moving direction, मेरा जो डायरेक्शन है वो किस डायरेक्शन में मेरा सब्जेक्ट जो मूवमेंट करने वाला है, एंड इंटायरली स्टोरी में टेल कर सकता हूँ। लेकिन अगर मैं सिर्फ क्रॉप करके इतना ही इमेज कैप्चर करूँ, तो इस इमेज में मैं प्रॉपर शो नहीं कर पाऊंगा। तो वो हमारे लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि कंपोजिशन क्या होता है एंड व्हाट कंपोजिशन एग्जैक्टली इट्स ऑल अबाउट। एंड द सेकंड, द सम रूल्स आर देयर, लाइक इन कंपोजिशन इन अपर्चर वी सॉ, लाइक हियर जैसे, ओके वन मोमेंट, तो अभी यहाँ पर जैसे ये कंपोजिशन का एक पार्ट है, तो इसमें एक टाइप अलग होता है लीडिंग लाइंस एंड कर्व्स। जब मैं कोई आर्किटेक्चरल फोटोग्राफी कर रहा हूँ, कोई इंडस्ट्रियल फोटोग्राफी कर रहा हूँ, तो वहां पर मुझे ध्यान में रखना है कि लाइंस किस तरीके से होते हैं। मतलब कुछ लाइंस ऐसे हैं जो सब्जेक्ट के टुवर्ड जाएंगे। जैसे इस इमेज में द वन ऑफ द कंपोजिशनल यूजेस ऑफ लीडिंग लाइंस इन एन इमेज इज टू गाइड द आई ऑफ द मेन पॉइंट ऑफ द इंटरेस्ट। अभी यहाँ पर इस इमेज को अगर मैं देखता हूँ, तो डायरेक्टली मेरा जो मेन इंटेंशन है वो इस पवन चक्की के ऊपर जाता है, क्योंकि मेरा जो सब्जेक्ट फोटोग्राफर ने प्लेस किया है सेंटर में, और वहां से ये जो प्लांट की खेती है, तो वहां पर जो लाइंस निकल रही है वो इस पर्टिकुलर पॉइंट से निकल रही है। तो वो मुझे दिखाना है, मेरा जो व्यूवर्स है उनको मुझे शो करना है सिर्फ पवन चक्की। सो दैट्स द रीजन आई केप्ट इन मिडल, और मैंने जो लीडिंग लाइन से मेरे सब्जेक्ट को जाके हिट कर रही है, तो मैंने वो कैप्चर किया। Like again I will show you some architectural अभी यहाँ पर जैसे ये बिल्डिंग का इमेज में ले रहा हूँ, मैं बिल्डिंग का इमेज के लेते वक्त जो ये ग्लासेस की जो लाइन्स है वो ऐसी मैंने कैप्चर किया ताकि वो एक इंटरसेक्शन पॉइंट मेरा शो करे। तो यहाँ पर मैं फॉलो कर रहा हूँ लीडिंग लाइंस को, जैसे इस इमेज में। तो जो लाइंस है ना, उन लाइंस को मुझे मेन सब्जेक्ट रखना है और उन लाइंस के थ्रू मुझे स्टोरी टेल करनी है। तो यहाँ पर भी मैं जब देख रहा हूँ तो मैं पूरी इमेज कैप्चर नहीं कर रहा हूँ बिल्डिंग की, बट आई एम एबल टू कैप्चर द story of that lines. So like here we can say again it's a one architectural photography. In architectural photography and we can say exterior photography, the lines are too much valuable. Like here when I'm capturing the one image, so I'm able to see the main vertical line and the horizontal line. Again I will show you one image which I captured. एक निर्वाणा करके बिल्डर्स है महाराष्ट्र में, सो आई कैप्चर, आई वाज डूइंग एक्सटीरियर शूट फॉर हिम। अभी ये जो बिल्डर है इनके ये इंटीरियर शूट थे, तो उनका जो मेन हवेली टाइप था जहाँ पे फ्लैट्स वगैरह थे, तो आई वर कैप्चरिंग द इंटीरियर, बट अगेन आई हैव टू कैप्चर द एक्सटीरियर। तो एक्सटीरियर में हमेशा मुझे ध्यान में रखना पड़ता है कि मुझे लीडिंग लाइंस को फॉलो करना है। जैसे ये इमेज है, अब इस इमेज को मैंने रात को 2 बजे क्लिक किया है, तो यहाँ पर मुझे क्या मिला, 2 बजे मैंने क्या किया, ट्राइपॉड मेरे पास था नहीं, तो मेरा लाइट का जो स्टैंड होता है, लाइट के स्टैंड के ऊपर मैंने मेरा कैमरा माउंट किया एंड आई kept my shutter speed too much slow, because of which I am able to capture the entire light in the image, and I switch my aperture on a higher, that is higher mode, like f8 f11. So I was capturing this image on f11, which was giving me the flexibility to keep entire image in a focus. तो यहाँ पर आप देख सकते हो कि सारे बिल्डिंग्स जो है फर्स्ट से लेकर लास्ट तक जो है मुझे फोकस दिखाई दे रहे हैं, एंड मेरा जो ये एंटायर इमेज है वो ऐसा लग रहा है कि इस एक पॉइंट से स्टार्ट हो रहा है। इस एक पॉइंट से एक लाइन जो जा रही है, ये जो पेड़ है उनको देखकर एक लाइन दिखाई देती है मुझे, ये जो एक रास्ता है, रास्ते के इसमें एक लाइन यहाँ से शो कर रही है, अगेन देयर इज अनदर वन लाइन, एंड हियर द बिल्डिंग्स आर आल्सो फ्रेमिंग वन लाइन. So like my image is divided into the two cross sections. So I am forming X, like X ना जैसे हम लोग कह सकते हैं, but same यहाँ पर भी एक रास्ता है, तो इट इज अ फर्स्ट साइड आने के लिए और ये जाने के लिए 2 रास्ते थे, तो मैंने क्या किया, एक ही रास्ते को कैप्चर किया, बट माय कंपोजिशन इज लाइक व्हेन आई एम कैप्चरिंग दिस इमेज, सो आई एम एबल टू सी, आई एम फ्रेमिंग द सब्जेक्ट, और मैं जो वहाँ पे परसेप्शन है मुझे दिखाना कि एग्जैक्टली ये कितना लॉन्ग डिस्टेंस है, तो मुझे शो करना है. सो दैट्स द रीजन आई कैप्चर्ड लीडिंग लाइन. सो यहाँ पर मैंने ध्यान में रखा कि मेरा जो मेन सेंटर लाइन है वो भी कैप्चर होना चाहिए. अगेन जो फुटपाथ है मेरा, वो एक लाइन मेरा फॉर्म कर रहा है, ये जो ये रेलिंग का साइड है वो, एंड अगेन ये पेड़ जो है, पेड़ एक लाइन कैप्चर कर रहे हैं. सो सेम अभी ये मैंने इसमें शूट किया. अगेन हियर आई फॉलो द लीडिंग लाइंस. तो यहाँ पर मैं शो कर पा रहा हूँ, लेकिन यहाँ पर मुझे ये एरिया भी शो करना था कि देयर इज अनदर रोड फ्रॉम द साइड. So that's the reason I shifted the camera. यहाँ पर आपका कंपोजिशन अलग हो गया. जैसे यहाँ पर आप देख सकते हो मेरा एक जो कंपोजिशन है, लाइक यहाँ से एक पॉइंट से सारा का सारा मेरा सब्जेक्ट स्टार्ट हो रहा है. तो ये ज्यादा करके आपको इंडस्ट्रियल जो प्रोजेक्ट्स है, जो हम लोग एक्सटीरियर शूट वगैरह करते हैं, वहां पर काम आता है. जैसे ये लो लाइट सिचुएशन में मैंने कैप्चर किया है. सो अगेन यूजिंग द सेम मेथड, बिकॉज ऑफ द लो शटर स्पीड आई एम एबल टू कैप्चर दिस फ्लिकर ऑफ द लाइट. तो जो स्ट्रीट लाइट है उनका फ्लिकर मुझे मिला, and my aperture was like f11 here in this case, but my shutter speed was 1/50th of the second. So that's the reason I'm able to capture the detailing. and जो low light situation में ज़्यादा करके पॉसिबल होता है हमें कि सब्जेक्ट वगैरह नहीं रहते, बिकॉज ये अगर मैं डे में कैप्चर करूंगा तो डे में इस तरीके का मुझे रिजल्ट नहीं मिलेगा. तो वो बहुत सारी चीज़ें होती है. बट इन इंटीरियर शूट वहाँ पर आपका कंपोजिशन थोड़ा अलग होता है. तो हर सिचुएशन में जब आप कोई पोर्ट्रेट शूट कर रहे हो या फिर इंडस्ट्रियल शूट कर रहे हो, तो आपका कंपोजिशन अलग हो जाएगा. सॉरी, लाइक हियर अभी ये इंटीरियर शूट है. इंटीरियर शूट में मेरी जो ये लाइंस है, जहाँ पर ये दीवार का लाइन है, ये मुझे हमेशा ट्राई करना है कि स्ट्रेट हो. तो इंटीरियर में आपको हमेशा बहुत फायदा होता है लीडिंग लाइंस का. मेरा कंपोजिशन इंटीरियर शूट में बहुत मैटर करता है. ये कंपोजिशन अभी यहाँ पर जैसे मुझे देख पा रहा हूँ, लाइक हियर अगेन देयर वाज वन इमेज, मैंने इसको मैनिपुलेट किया था. तो ये उस बिल्डर के लिए शूट किया था. अभी यहाँ पर मैंने 4 दरवाजे कैप्चर किए हैं, बट मुझे दिखाना क्या है कि मुझे सिर्फ ये लास्ट दरवाजा दिखाना है, लास्ट जो विंडो है वो। तो मैंने क्या किया, कैमरा एकदम सेंटर में प्लेस किया, और ये जो दोनों लाइन है, ये दिस लाइन एंड दिस लाइन, तो ये सारे के सारे लाइंस मुझे एक स्ट्रेट लेवल में चाहिए। तो दिस इज अ मिरर, because of which I am able to see the reflection of this side and I am able to capture 3 doors. तो जब मैं इमेज शो कर रहा हूँ मेरे क्लाइंट को, मेरा पूरा फ्लैट जो है उसका वो कैप्चर हो गया, बट एक ही इमेज में देखने के लिए जाऊंगा तो मुझे ज्यादा एरिया कैप्चर हो रहा है। तो दिस इज अगेन योर कंपोजिशन एंटायरली, लाइक हियर। एंड कंपोजिशन करते हो आपका जो आप चीजें प्लेस करते हो वो कभी कभी हमें मैनुअली भी प्लेस करनी पड़ती है। जैसे मैंने इस सिचुएशन में ये जो ग्रास में लेकर आया हूँ, यहाँ पे जो फ्लावर पॉट रखा है, तो ये खुद मैंने रखा था बिकॉज ऑफ मुझे इमेज थोड़ा खाली फ्रेम दिखाई दे रहा था, तो वो मुझे फिलअप करना पड़ता है। जैसे मेरा भी यहाँ पर विंडो मेन मेरा सब्जेक्ट है, तो आई विल ट्राई कि मैं जो एरिया कैप्चर करूँ विंडो स्ट्रेट कैप्चर करूँ। तो ये मेरा विंडो जो है वो स्ट्रेट लेवल में कैप्चर हुआ है, ना टेढ़ा वगैरह ऐसा कुछ नहीं, सिर्फ स्ट्रेट में कैप्चर हुआ है। एंड आई एम एबल टू कैप्चर द डाइनिंग टेबल, देन द सोफा एंड द एंटायर हॉल। तो हमारे लिए हमें ध्यान में रखना है कि कंपोजिशन बहुत मैटर करेगा, जैसे इस सिचुएशन में हमने देखा था। और ज्यादा करके आपका एक्सटीरियर शूट्स, आपका इंटीरियर शूट्स, योर पोर्ट्रेट फोटोग्राफी, देन योर लैंडस्केप फोटोग्राफी, हियर इज रिक्वायर्ड, लाइक हियर। तो कंपोजिशन का हमें ध्यान में हमने देखा कि कंपोजिशन इज ऑल अबाउट योर फ्रेमिंग योर सब्जेक्ट एंड व्हाट यू वांट टू टेल योर व्यूअर्स टू व्यू, टू सी इन योर इमेज। ओके, तो आज हमने ये सीखा कि पहले एक्सपोजर ट्रायंगल, कि एक्सपोजर ट्रायंगल में 3 चीजें जो है हमारी वो हमें हेल्प करती है टू अंडरस्टैंड कि मेरी मैक्सिमम जो अप्रोक्सीमेटली सेटिंग्स क्या रहेंगी। सेकेंड हमने सीखा डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड। डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड में हमने देखा कि आपका 3 चीजें जो वो मैटर करती है, एक आपका सब्जेक्ट जो है वो, उसका सब्जेक्ट एंड आपका कैमरा उसके बीच का डिफरेंस मतलब डिस्टेंस। सेकेंड आपका अपर्चर लेवल, जितना कम रहेगा उतना आपको डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड जो है वो छोटा मिलेगा एंड आपका बैकग्राउंड जो बहुत ज्यादा ब्लर होगा। एंड थर्ड यूर फोकल लेंथ ऑफ द लेंस, तो मेरा लेंस जो है वो कितना मिनिमम पे मैं शूट कर रहा हूँ वो हमने देखा। नाउ वी सॉ द कंपोजिशन। कंपोजिशन मतलब क्या, कि मैं जो कुछ भी कैप्चर कर रहा हूँ उसको मैं इस तरीके से कैप्चर करूँ ताकि जो एक स्टोरी है, मेरे स्टोरी मेरे इमेज के थ्रू मुझे प्लेस करना है, मतलब मेरा इमेज में मैं लोगों को क्या दिखाना चाहता हूँ वो मुझे ध्यान में रखना है। ये ज्यादा करके आर्किटेक्चर वगैरह वहां पर यूज किया जाता है। लाइक यहाँ पर अभी जैसे ये पुराने मंदिर के पिलर्स है, तो जो फोटोग्राफर ने कैप्चर किया डाउनवर्ड से कैप्चर किया है, बट उसका मेन इंटेंशन है कि मुझे इस ये जो नक्शी काम है वो मुझे शो करना है। So that's the reason he composed his image in a such a way that when I will saw the image, I will be only focused on this particular नक्शी काम, that design, architectural design. जैसे यहाँ पर this was again the bottom like a ground level shot which was placed. कैमरा जो है मेरे ग्राउंड पे ऊपर की तरफ शो करके मैंने कैप्चर किया है। एंड हियर आई एम एबल टू फ्रेम वन क्रॉस साइन। एक्चुअली ये बहुत बड़ा बिल्डिंग है ऐसा, तो वो एक चीज होती है। जस्ट आज के लिए हमने इतना ध्यान में रखा, अभी इसका रिवीजन हमें करना है। कल जब हम लोग मिलेंगे तो हमें ये ध्यान में रखना है कि आपका पहले का एक्सरसाइज जो आपको मैंने दिया था वो, आज का एक्सरसाइज में होल्ड रखता हूँ बिकॉज वो आप पहले कंप्लीट कर लीजिए। कल जो है कल हम लोग इसका एक्सरसाइज में आपको दूंगा कि कंपोजिशन एंड जो हमारा डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड है। ओके, तो आज जो हम लोगों ने स्टडी किया उसमें कुछ डाउट वगैरह है सर आपको?
No, not much. It's okay. I'm understanding.
राइट
Now,
राइट,
how much I remember tomorrow. So, because it is new thing, so I have to
एग्जैक्टली,
revise once again. No problem.
नहीं कोई
I
बात
do
नहीं।
some, no, once we learn, if I shoot immediately, means today I learned everything, in the next 1 week or 10 days, I go to different places, shoot and share you the picture,
राइट
saying what I want to communicate. Then you will be able to say, I kept the aperture properly or the shutter speed properly, like that. If
एग्जैक्टली,
I learn, don't shoot for 1 year, then try once again, won't work.
right sir, that is the reason the practice is too much important, because we can discuss the things over here but when you will practice that time only you will get the practical experience of that particular thing.
And
So how
also,
to
I
compose.
have to later on, after I complete the course, I'll go and shoot some picture with
Right.
each aperture in mind, shutter speed in mind, or composition in mind, like that. Then
Right.
I will learn the whole thing.
Definitely, sir. So always after course completion also, when you will be capturing, share the images with me. We will have a
Yes,
session in which we will discuss that what is the
yes,
exactly particular problem in this image. So how we can overcome that problem. तो वो सारी images जो आप क्लिक करोगे ना, वो शेयर करते रहना मुझसे, तो हम लोग कंटिन्यूसली उसको
okay.
प्रोसेस और डिस्कस करते रहेंगे.
Yeah,
ठीक है?
definitely.
Okay, sir. So
Because
as
now
per
it is COVID, in nowhere you can go.
right.
Scared.
So now we have only one option in the home. The small objects which we have, we can place and we can shoot. I also am not able to go to the office because my entire setup is in the studio, which is in the office, entire the big studio. But two cameras I kept at my home to just for practice because मैं उनके बिना रह नहीं सकता. So वो cameras मैं घर पे लेके आया था. Again there are two other cameras which are in the office only in that particular temperature control freezer. So वो जरूरी होता है because the lens also get moisture because of this humidity
Yes.
and dust and all. So every time I have to clean, and every day end of the day I clean my camera, then again a laptop and all. So that care of your equipment is also too much important
Yes,
because
yes.
your lens, sensor, if it is getting dust, so your image will not be that much clear. Okay.
Yes.
Sure, sir. So today, for as of now, we will stop over here because if I go ahead, so it will be like a bouncer session
Yes,
जहाँ
yes.
पर बहुत ज़्यादा हो जाएगा. But as of now, हमने तीन चीजें से मोटा-मोटा सीखा है. हमने सीखा डेप्थ ऑफ फील्ड, हमने सीखा कंपोजिशन और हमने सीखा
Composition.
अपना एक्सपोजर ट्रायंगल. ठीक है? ओके सर. तो आज
Thank you.
आप प्रैक्टिस वगैरह कीजिए जो मैंने कल आपको होमवर्क दिया था और मुझे शेयर कर दीजिएगा इमेजेस.
Okay. ठीक है.
श्योर सर. चलिए. बाय सर. टेक
Bye.
केयर. बाय
Bye.
सर.
Well, hello all. Thank you so much again for joining in. My name is Sachin Rai. I'm born and brought up in Bombay, but I'm originally from Bangalore. But I've lived in Bangalore now for the last 5-6 years. I'm based out of Bangalore. I was an IT professional first. I used to design websites, and then I switched to my career to wildlife photography in the year 2007, which is 13 years ago. So I've been doing it professionally for the last 13 years. Before that, I was a hobbyist for good 7-8 years. Before 2001 is when I picked up my first camera. So I started going to wildlife destinations. I started enjoying birding, looking at large mammals, everything under the sun, honestly, under the bigger bracket of nature. And that is when I picked up my first camera. I had a point and shoot first, but in year 2001, I picked my first SLR camera, which is a EOS 66, Canon EOS 66, and a mere moderate 75-300 lens. Back then, it was a big thing, and it was a good investment too back then. And hardly anyone was in photography, in wildlife photography, I would say. And I used to shoot something called slides, which were also transparencies, which is the opposite of negative. It's good fun because you come back and you couldn't see your pictures. What you have today as a DSLR, you can always take a picture and you can review it instantly. I think the two best thing that has happened to in the digital era is that one, you can review your picture instantly, and second, the magic button, which is the delete button. You can just delete the picture and not feel bad about it. Because back then, when you used to shoot film rolls or slides, every picture would cost us money. So it was a nightmare when you can't see the result, you don't know if your settings are right and stuff like that. So it was tricky, but never in the life of us we could realize that there could be a day when you can actually see the result instantly. So it's a good era that we're living in. So all right, so I'll quickly begin with what sets you apart as a wildlife photographer. What is the scope? What is necessary for you to be a good wildlife photographer? So I'll quickly start with my presentation, which is very few content areas, largely tutorial, but I'll skim through the content part. Yeah? So very basic, what do you need? You need equipment, right? What do you need? You need a good DSLR or a mirrorless camera, or you need an appropriate lens. What is an appropriate lens? If you're shooting macro, you need a macro. If you're using wide angles, you need wide angle lens. If you're shooting birds, you need a long lens. If you're shooting mammals, you need a zoom telephoto lens, a 7200, 100, 400 kind of a lens. Please carry extra batteries. Extra batteries are very important if you are going on a wildlife tour. carry enough memory cards. It's always important if you are going to a place like Ranthambore or any of the tiger parks, or if you're going to Africa. In one safari itself, you could exhaust your memory card. So always be prepared for that. Unlike product shoots or something where you have capability of shooting in the studio and you have everything accessible, if you are doing a wildlife trip, you have to carry it into the field. When we say field, it means on a trip. A good battery grip can be handy. Carry a torch or flash if you're doing macro photography. Field guide. Field guide means books, reference books. You need, if you are into birding, then you carry a bird book. If you are into mammals, you carry a mammal book. If you are into frogs, there are a lot of frog books available, snake books available, scorpion books available. There is enough butterfly books available. So if you are interested in one of these mediums or streams, you could carry one of those field books with you, because it's very it enhances your knowledge in the field, because it increases your curiosity. You see a butterfly that you before, you skim through the book and you say, oh, there is more detail about it. Where is it found? Is it found in this area? Or when does it breed? What does it eat? All that information. It's quite interesting if you pick those things up. Proper clothing you want, wear drab clothes and stuff like that. Carry a binocular. Worst case, if you can't really shoot it, the bird is too far and stuff. But what do you need to be a wildlife photographer per se? One foremost is knowledge about your subject matter. It's very critical, guys. If you are getting into wildlife photography, it's better you understand where you're going and what you're going to shoot. Yeah? These two will set you apart. I'll give you an example on each one of these. Yeah? Second, love for nature. When I say love for nature, you will not be able to do a phenomenal job or a great job if you are going to be stuck up and say, guys, I am going to shoot only tigers, or I'm going to shoot only elephants, because these are subjects that people are to death. If you just Google tiger, you will get like what, probably 10,000 pages of images of tigers. So everyone has done it. How are you going to set yourself apart as a good wildlife? So if you have love for nature and you say, I'm okay looking at a lizard or a frog or a bird or a rare mammal, I'm okay anything under that umbrella, then you have scope to be a slightly better wildlife photographer, or people will recognize your work sooner, because you're not putting yourself in the bracket of just the large mammal photographer. Patience, you need patience, which is the biggest, one of the biggest tools for you to have if you are getting wildlife, because nothing is in your control. You don't have the light in your control, you don't have the subject's mood in your control. The guy can sit, walk, jump, catch, die in front of you, and you have no idea when it's going to happen. So you need to be patient for something to happen for you to be able to do a decent job. The right camera gear is very important. If you have, I'll come into that also. If you want to shoot macro, as I said, you need a macro lens. If you want to show the habitat, you need a wide angle. For all of that, you need the right equipment. Knowledge about your equipment. You have the best equipment, but you don't know how to use it. That is where most people fail. So if you are technically sound, you know the aperture shutter, ISO, you know the metering, you know the focusing, you know all of that, all the plays of your DSLR, then you can do a very good job on the, because as a wildlife photographer, you have to take very quick decisions. From moving the focus point to increasing the ISO, to increasing the shutter speed, lowering your shutter speed, all of these has to be very quick. But if you know how to handle your gear, then it's easier for you to do a good job. Yeah. Third is, last is composition, and we will talk about composition today throughout, because that is the most critical. Because I will not be able to do justice on saying any of the above topics for 1 hour, because subject and place is just too wide a topic. Love for nature is too wide a topic. Patience is something that you can't really explain. You just need to have it. So composition is something that we need to talk about. But I'll quickly skim through the first 5 topics and tell you what I mean by saying that. So throughout the presentation, guys, starting from now, it is a heavy pictorial presentation. And at the top left corner, I have written the topic of what we are talking about. And at the bottom left, I've written the animal name or the bird name or the subject's name and the equipment I have used to take this picture. Yeah? So just for quick references, you have that handy. So knowledge about the subject and place. This is an extremely rare monkey called a stump-tailed carp. Now this is found only in very few parts in India, in the east of India. It's also found in some parts of Southeast Asia, but within India it's very uncommon. It's uncommon in Southeast Asia also, but this was shot in Assam. small place given by sanctuary, and there are only two troops of these animals. Each troop is around 80, 90 animals, and these guys are canopy dwellers, which means they sleep on top of the trees, but during the day they feed on the ground. They eat the roots of small plant of a particular species. So they uproot the plant and they eat the root. That is what they do. Now they live in dense forests, so to be able to know where they are and if they are there is when you'll be able to do justice. Is only when you'll be able to plan a trip. Is only when you'll be able to come back with pictures and be able to share a story about it, which is what will happen. So knowledge about your subject and place is very important. Love for nature, as I said, be open to shoot. There is I shoot frogs. One of my most favorite topics is frogs. I love to shoot frogs. My mom doesn't understand. My mom says, why would you want to go to Kerala to take pictures of frogs? You can go below the building, there are frogs there. So she may not understand how many species we have. Around 400 species of frogs in a country, which is phenomenal, which is massive compared to what other countries have. I have seen more than 100 species across the country. So I have gone breadth and length of the country in the monsoons, going looking for a particular species of frog. So my point is, if you love nature, be open towards it, absorb everything, that will set you apart because you know that your work is going to be unique than someone else's. So you have better potential to display yourself as a different photographer, as a different wildlife photographer. Patience. This lioness slept on top of that tree for 4 hours, 5 hours. Actually, she slept for longer. We watched her sleep for 4 hours because she was just sleeping. And we thought, oh, we saw her around 2 o'clock, 1:30 something, and she got down at 6:45 in the evening. And all throughout we were waiting, oh, she might come down now, she might come down. She came out only late evening, and thank God she came out late evening because we could produce a lovely silhouette of her. So my point is, if you are patient, in all probabilities it will work for you. Of course, there are times it will bomb. Imagine now at 6:45 she hadn't come down. You would have had to go back to the property because you get back to your lodge after sunset. You can't stay in the park. So even if she had come 5 minutes later, you would have missed this. So there is a fair amount of luck, but that luck will work if you are patient. So patience is one of the keys that we talked about. Right camera gear. Now, if I did not have a wide angle, I wouldn't have been able to use this image. If I had only the zoom lens and I take a lovely portrait of these two lions, I may not have been able to do a different job. Yeah? So here is a place, this is classical Masai Mara, the grassland, the hill range behind this called the Olololo Escarpment, which is a long hill range, beautiful summer cloud, you know, everything works for me when I do justice to the picture by using a wide angle as opposed to a tight framing. You can see my mouse cursor. My point is, I could have taken a picture like this, which is just a sharp portrait. It may not have worked. So I would prefer that I use a wide angle. That is why I said right camera gear is important. If you have multiple equipment in your hand, it's slightly easier for you to take better pictures. Knowledge about your camera gear. Now this is a picture that I have underexposed by more than 2 stops, if I remember correctly. 2 stops is way too much light that I've cut down. That is because I wanted to highlight the display. If you look at it on a regular view, it's fine. It's just that the face had a little more light on it. All I had to ensure that I want to expose the brightest area properly, and hence I underexposed. So if you know your gear, you can't pre-plan this, guys. You don't know the leopard is there. The leopard just pops out of the bush instantly. The sunset hitting on the face, you have to be extremely quick to change your settings. Which is why I said, if you know your camera gear properly, you know where the exposure compensation is, you know where the ISO button is, you know where the aperture is. If you know your buttons very well, and if you know the nuances of camera, you can do a very good job. So, which is why I said knowing your knowledge about your camera gear is important too, as a wildlife. So, setting all this apart, what we will concentrate on today's presentation is composition. Because this is something that you, all of you all, can utilize it irrespective of what you shoot. When I say irrespective, even if you are taking your phone on a personal trip and you want to take pictures of a garden or a dog running or a mountain or anything that falls under the bracket of nature, you can use the same compositional fundamentals. So we will push our discussion today hardcore on composition starting now. If you have queries, you ask me questions about composition, about equipment, about anything you wish to. But as I said, it's talking about each one of them independently will give us only 5 minutes. We rather take 40 minutes and talk about one topic so that you know, and it's easier. Even if you don't know technically how to increase aperture, shutter, ISO, with a simple phone you can do the same composition that I am talking about. So this is something that I'm assuming will connect with you easier and faster, and probably will appeal to you. Yeah. So we shall talk about composition on how do you frame your subject, what do you display when you compose. What is composition? Composition in very basic terms says that what am I going to show to my viewer or my friends or my family, whoever I'm taking the picture for. Let's say I'm going to post it only on Instagram, I'm going to post it only on Facebook. What frame am I going to show? So if I have taken my dog out for a walk in the garden and the dog is walking around, do I show my dog? Do I show the dog and the people around it? Or do I show the dog behind the trees? Or do I take this guy also? All of it, your choice. That is your composition. Now, when you're taking that decision, there has to be certain things kept in mind, which is common across all photography mediums, largely in wildlife, where we say that there are certain things if you keep in mind, you might be able to do a far better job in terms of presenting your picture. So your picture looks very, very cool if you just follow these very simple guidelines or ethics that I'm going to talk about. Yeah? So we'll start with composition. So how do you define composition? You have guidelines and rules. So there are certain guidelines available that do's and don'ts. So please do this and please don't do that. Now, of course, guys, all of us know that whoever is here now who's listening to my presentation, all of you all know that photography is a creative medium. I want to express myself. I want to take a picture, I connect with it, and I take it and I share it with the world. Now, that is my story. Right? So when I am going to tell my story, I don't want to be told that there are rules, you can't do this, you can't do that. Of course not. But it's scientifically proven, guys, that if you present your picture in a certain way, it appeals to a human mind. And that is why people have used this across all, from painting to sculptures to monuments to drawings to photography. It's the same fundamentals. And those fundamentals, though we call it rules, as I said, we can soft code it by saying it's a guideline or an ethic, saying that this is not right, but this is right. Now, there is no harm in trying, saying I'm going to think out of the box, I'm going to break open the glass. Please feel free to do that. But people will believe you, or they'll realize that you are actually a creative person when you have already done the regular composition. So you're going with your very simple following the methods of the very basic structure of composition, and you do it that, and then from there you graduate to a creative medium. But by default, at least, please do try to see if you can put these in place. Yeah? I'll tell you about the guideline. I'll tell you about each topic in detail. I'll just skim through all these four. What is the second? Cropping and framing. What is cropping? Not taking a picture, bringing it, and then cropping it on a computer. I am talking about how do you compose it. Are you going to, if you have a lens now, let's say zoom in, zoom out lens, are you going to take the person entirely, or going to take half, or you're going to take 1/3? What are you going to compose? That is cropping for me. So how do you crop an individual or an animal particularly, or a landscape? We will talk about that. How do you frame it? Third is how do you utilize light? Why is light important? Because light is something that will make or break your image. It is something that will ensure that you have some very, very cool looking images. So you need to see if you can utilize light. Now, in all probabilities, I'm talking about natural light. Yeah, because you're shooting wildlife, you can't be carrying a torch and shining on the face of the tiger and saying, it doesn't work that way. The tiger will be far and the tigers will be annoyed too. So don't try that. The point is that if the tiger is sitting in the shade versus the tiger sitting on the out in the open, you would rather want it out in the open. Because in the shade, there won't be much light. So, but can we do that early morning and late evening when the light is good? Or can we go behind the animal, place the car behind the animal so that the light is against the animal? It just heats up like this. There can be some very, very cool, dramatic light effects that you can use with just playing with your angle. Yeah? So we can talk about that as well. Third is very simple. How do you tell a story? What is a storytelling? What is an emotionally connected? I'll show you 4-5 pictures of that. So I'll quickly skim you through all of this. Yeah. So let's talk. What is the guide, right, and rule? A picture that I showed earlier, and I say said that if I had the right camera gear, I presented this. So what is the first and foremost guideline? The guideline is rule of thirds. What is rule of thirds? Rule of thirds says that you split your image into three parts. Okay, so I will make a grid like this, imaginary, obviously not in your picture. Most of the cameras will also have the grids like this. You can switch the grid on and you'll be able to see this. If not, you just draw an imaginary line and make cross section. So 33% vertical line, 33% another vertical line. You split into 33, 33, 30. Similar vertical 33, vertical 33, vertical. At the cross junctions is where you should ideally block your subject. So the idea is that do not try to keep your subject in the center of the frame. Try your level best not to keep the subject in the center of the frame, but try to keep it at 1/3 position. Any of these 1/3 is okay. Okay? Any of these dots. Which of these dots would you want to put into is something that we'll talk about. Yeah? But firstly, we need to understand almost every picture, unless it's a portrait, it's a tight portrait, which will come to. Unless it's a tight portrait, we will try to position our subject in one of these four boxes. Okay? Which of these four boxes? Now, the second guideline says that have less of foreground and more of background, which means show less grass, more sky. So, invariably, the top two pointers are ruled out, which means if I keep my lion there, how do I keep my lion there, by the way? I move my focus point there. Correct? No? In my camera, I move my focus point to the top right, which means obviously I'll have to bring my lions there, which means there'll be a lot more grass below in the frame. I don't want to do that because I don't want to show grass. I want to show more of sky, more of background, less of foreground. You understand what foreground background is, right? Foreground is what is between us and the subject, and background is between the subject and the rear, whatever is there behind. That is the point. Okay? So we'll keep more of background and less of foreground. So between us and the subject, whatever element is there, we keep less in the frame when we compose. That's a good way to go about it. Okay? So that way the top two are ruled out because we said first it has to be more background, so we can't put it on the top, so we put them at the bottom. Now between the left and the right, which one will we choose? Then the second guideline comes, or the third guideline comes into existence, which is called sense of direction or sense of movement. Because the lines are looking to the side, looking to the outside, you add more space there. So it's a very simple fundamentals. If I am looking like this, if you can see me at the top right corner or on the phone, wherever else, see my camera, the window, you will realize that I'm looking to the right, which means please add more space in front of me and add less space behind me. Whereas if I look here, you add more space here and less space behind. So your frame becomes. Yeah? So every time, wherever the subject is looking at, you add more space there because that is what is called a sense of direction. I don't want to know where the subject has come from. I want to know where it is going. So you can do a fairly good job deciding that. Now, in this case, it's easier than so amongst 4 points. It's not great rocket science for us. It's very easy for you to decide where you have to put in within these 4 boxes. But you have to, as much as possible, adhere to this rule of composition because that is everything. So if you look at any good wildlife photographers or any form of photography, you will realize this is how they do it. In fact, even well laid out magazines, right? If you go to Vogue or any other lovely fashion magazines and you see a model's face, let's say it's a portrait and a side face picture, they will always, invariably always, let's say if this is the side of the picture, okay, this is the side of the face, they will post it on the left page and not on the right page. Because the moment you open the magazine, the person's eye should be leading you to the next page. It shouldn't be leading you outside the page. That's why it's called sense of direction. So you need those eyes to lead you to a certain area. So in this case, because the lions are looking left, I would want more area on the left to be kept. Yep. That is what is rule of third. Try going eye level, guys. It makes a huge impact. This is an eater from Brazil. If I stand and take a picture, it will be angular, which means the background is going to be closer to the angular, which means there won't be much depth of field. There won't be option for me to blur out the background. But here I am flat on my stomach, on my elbow. Actually, I've gone on my elbow. I think that's slightly raised because if I go much lower, I'll have the grass as blurred. So I go my elbow into the picture, I go eye level to the angle, and the background becomes goes away from the subject, right? Because if I stand and take a picture like this, the subject is here, the background is right here, the ground. But if I go lower, the background is this, right, which is farther. So I can get a lovely background if you go high. And it's easier also to connect with when you show a picture. An eye level shot is better looking always than an angular picture. I'll give you one more example. Like this is called the crested fireback. It's from Borneo, Southeast Asia, Malaysia actually. And it's a rare bird. And I stepped out of my room and I saw this bird just come out. So I blocked myself flat on the ground. I lifted myself a little with a long lens, 5 minutes on this picture. Now, I would have this picture as opposed to me standing and taking a picture where I show more of the back and the grass is fighting for attention. So as much as possible, try to go lower. Even if you're taking a flower, no, don't take a picture like this. Try to go lower and try to see if you can get a slightly high level of the subject that you're shooting. The macro lens, it's a frog calling out for me. It's small. You know how small the frog is? It's probably half the size of my this tiny frog, and it's calling out loud on the leaf. And it's angular though. So if I want to go lower and eye level, this is how. So I personally think that this is better than this because this is eye level. This will be far more impactful and will get the entire profile of. Yeah. So as much as possible, guys, please go eye level. It's a better appealing picture. Yeah. Then which zoom would you want to use? Different focal lengths. You know what a focal length is, right? Focal length means I have used a 70-200 mm on this lens, and I've shot this at 85 mm. Okay, which means zoom down. I can also shoot at 200 mm, and I also mount another lens and take this image. So what is this? This is a tiger in a lovely place called Ranthambore in Rajasthan. There is a ruined wall behind, old ruins, probably 1,000 years or more of the structure, a dilapidated building, and I want to show the water and the forest and the old structure, everything intact. But if I want to zoom in more and I want to show only the tiger or a little bit of the habitat and the tiger, I zoom in at 200 mm. You see, notice the difference? Same place, same angle, okay, everything is the same. This is at 85 mm, this is at 200 mm. So if you have a slightly longer reach, you'll be able to get a better picture or a different picture, because the better is very subjective. What I may like this. If I am going to write an article or write a blog, I would use this picture. But if I am on Instagram, I would use this picture. This is a 400 mm shot. Same place, same tiger, same wall in the background, but it will get distanced out and blurred out. Because on Instagram or on Facebook, this may not do justice because the real estate is too small on my phone. Because most of the people will be seeing Instagram on a phone, and the real estate is going to be only this much. It means it's not going to be that impactful. So I rather have this. But does it mean it stops me from taking a picture like this? No, of course not. In wildlife, there could be times like this where the subject thankfully will be patient. So if you can possibly switch lenses, even if you have two lenses, it will be great. So if you have a wider angle and you have a really long lens, it will be fine. Ideal is having 3 lenses. So it's a wide angle, a 70-200 or a 100-400 and a prime lens. Ideal, which is what I carry. I carry a 400 mm, I carry a 100-400 or a 70-200. And I carry one wide angle so that I can get all 3 perspectives. But it's up to you, your budget, your economy. You decide how you want to go about it. But I would recommend that you carry at least 2 lenses. One is a wide angle and one is a prime or telephoto lens. If you do not have the budget for it, then go for an in-between lens. Maybe a 100-400 is ideal. Have a mix of both. You can shoot one picture at 100 mm and one at 400 mm. It's one of my favorite lenses. So you could try and do that. But the idea is that with different focal lengths, this is what you can do. Yeah. Another example. This is how you see a jaguar. This is in Brazil. Place called Mathnon, where you go on a motorboat to see these jaguars which come to the water to hunt small caimans. Caimans are small crocodiles, different species of crocodile, and these jaguars come into the water to come hunt these. So where is the jaguar? Here, it's in the water actually at the bottom right. If you see just where the naked wall patch is, just below that place. So this is shot at 116 mm with a 70-200 lens. Whereas this is how it would look like if I use same subject, same place, same distance. So this is what your focal length would do. when you are taking pictures. Yeah, so that is how your composition will vary depending on what you want to show. So my request is take both kinds of pictures so that you have a mixed version of both. Okay? Move around for a better background. Now, it's a Gelada baboon in Ethiopia, highlands of Ethiopia. The one on the left is what we were shooting, and then we realized, oh, that if we just move around a bit, and if the monkey also turns around for us, we can get a different background. So all we did is we moved around to the right, and we had a beautiful sky in the background. Now, which one is better between the two? That I don't. Yeah, I could have a personal taste. My personal taste is one on the right with the blue sky. I'm sure some of you will say, boss, I think I like the complete brown yellow background. So we're not debating about which looks good. We are saying that there could be possibility that you can get two different pictures or two different backgrounds at the same time. You decide what is appealing for you, because at the end of the day, you are the owner of your picture. So I personally like with the sky because it's lower angle. It depicts that it is high up in the mountains, so that you can also get the sky in the background and stuff. So moving around will help. Cropping, when I say cropping, composing in the field, that way cropping. How do you compose? How do you crop? Now with a 100-400 mm lens, I ensure that you zoom out and you take the entire animal in so that you don't chop off the legs of the animal, even if you can't see the animal's legs. In this case, the great one-horned rhinoceros, Kaziranga. And if you notice, the legs are behind the grass, which means the leg will probably end somewhere here. And this leg, this is almost the knee of the animal, so the leg will come somewhere here. So you add a little more space after that leg also. So even if you cannot see the body part, ensure that you add the body part within the grass or within the water, behind a tree or behind it, okay? As much as possible. So you don't crop it. When I say crop it, don't zoom in like this. Don't cut your frame from here. That is a bad cropping. Okay. Here, now if you have to zoom in, and let's say you cannot zoom out and still can't accommodate the entire animal, what you do, don't zoom out, zoom in more. You take less than 40 or 35% of the animal, say retain around 35% of the animal and omit around 60 to 65%. So you retain only 35 to 40% so that you know and you're telling the viewer that was I intentionally cut it. I have not accidentally. A lot of times what happens is people will take away only the tail of it or take away only the hind leg of the animal. That is not good. So you have to ensure that you incorporate the entire animal or say 30 to 35%. Okay, which is something that ideally in wildlife we do. In fashion, people do it differently. In fashion, people will accommodate the entire animal because they want to show the fingertips. They might chop off from the knee, but if it's a chimpanzee and standing, do not do that. Chop off from here, retain only this. Don't include the entire body, or you don't even take from it up. So 35%, 30% of the subject is good. Yeah. So that is what we did here. Similarly, look at this tiger now. There is a lot of empty space in front of it. Why have we kept it on the right? Because it's looking to the left. That we talked about, right? Sense of direction. But why have we kept so much to the corner? There is so much space here. Because we do not want to include more of the animal because it's wrong development, it's wrong composition. So because we have to cut off the animal, it's okay to have empty space in front of it as long as you do not include more of the animal. Because the moment you include the stomach, people will say, oh, how I wish I see the hind leg. If you include the hind leg, people will say, oh, how I wish I could see the tail. It's a feeling within it. You will let the viewer feel that. So best is do not give them imaginary body parts. Give them, cut it off and say, boss, now you don't even bother about what's there. Yeah? We use the same fundamentals in macro photography. What is a macro photography? Macro photography is where you magnify smaller subjects. Okay? Which I keep often telling the difference between a telephoto lens or a zoom lens versus a macro is zoom lens will give you benefits like a binocular will, and macro will give you benefits like a microscope will. So it will magnify smaller subjects into big format. So you actually see more details of small subjects. So macro is a phenomenal domain within wildlife photography. I would very strongly recommend you use macro lenses. It's an absolutely game changer. You will see the world differently. There's so much out there that will simply do not notice because they're small, and it makes you unique because not too many people have. So it's a very, very unique place to be if you can possibly. Yes, yeah. Now, the rules apply the same, guys. Positioning, cropping, composing. Now here I have ensured that I have omitted a large part of the body because the belly is massive, the tail is beautifully curved. You do not want to show that. I can show you the skull of the body of the chameleon and the eye of the chameleon. That is all I want, and the scales. That is all I want to show. So I zoom in further. Now the beauty of a macro lens is that apart from great magnification, it also gives you finer details. Because all the scales, you'll see the scales very easily in this, right? So if you have a macro lens, you'll be able to produce this, which you may not be able to produce with the regular telephoto lens, because you'll have something that is an MFD, which is minimum focusing distance. So a macro lens will allow you to go closer to a subject, maybe not emotionally also. I'm saying physically also it will allow you to go closer. But otherwise you can actually emotionally also. When you go closer and you see the details, it's oh my God, this is stunning, man. This is so much fun to see so much details on any of the subject, even if it's a fly for that matter. When you zoom in, look at its leg, it has hairs on its legs. It is like that. If I don't know if you've seen a scorpion's tail. A scorpion's tail will have a lot of hair particles, and that you can see only when you use a macro lens. It's very, very cool. Very strong data. Now, one of the fun things about macro is that this is it's called the rhinoceros horn, right? So because of the horn, this is a large beetle that is big, almost 5-6 inches, and this is found in Borneo. Now, with the macro lens, you don't have zoom in, zoom out feature, which means you go back and forth, right? So in this case, I will move back if I want to accommodate the entire animal. But if I want to take only the head of this, I will have to move closer with my lens. So I go back and forth depending on how I want to compose. So in this case, what I've done is I've gone ahead and taken a picture so that I show fine the details of the horn itself. Yeah, are we good here? So what we do with macro is you move back and forth. There's a vertical picture, a horned frog, it's this big a frog, sitting beautifully. So you move back, you make a vertical and you take a picture so that you can accommodate the frame. But similarly, if I want to go closer and show what the horn is all about, just the eyelid and how it is made, I go closer and take a picture. So irrespective of what the subject is, you can have unique perspectives. You can also have a slightly wider perspective with a macro lens. Now, I could have gone, I have a picture of I've gone way too closer and I have only the head and the face, like this one. I have a similar shot of this frog too. It's a falcon tree frog. A very pretty, just looking small tree frog. Tree frogs because they live up in the tree and they come down only to breed. So, I have ensured that I have moved out and I have shown the full leaf. It's a night shot, of course, but you can take a slightly wider perspective with macro lens too. Similarly, you can magnify something very small. This is again half the size, or probably the size of my little finger. The entire chameleon is the size of my little finger. Yeah? So you can magnify an animal this small and get some fantastic results. So I've used external flash here. Actually, external flash mounted on my tripod, and I've used a diffuser to diffuse of the light so that the light doesn't come from the scaly, shiny body part. Yeah? I have shot a bird with my lens. So you can shoot anything. Now this bird was very close. It's one of my night walks because I go looking for frogs and snakes and stuff like that. I also encounter birds sleeping. These guys sleep in night, right? Like all of us. So birds find a small area, they go to the edge of a plant and sleep. Usually they don't sleep high in dense thickets. Some birds, because they realize that if a snake or predator has to come, they will realize that because at the corner, when a snake moves in, the twig will shake and they'll realize where something's coming on it and they can take off. That's why they usually go and sleep at the extreme corner of the small birds particularly. Heavy birds like francolins and all will ensure that they'll go deeper in the thicket because they don't want nocturnal mammals to see them and catch them. So in this case, it's very close. The bird is very close. So I have just used my friends and colleagues to light it up with 2 torches. So there are 2 torch lights that you aim at it, no flash, and you take it. So with a macro, it's not necessary that you just have to magnify. The fact is that you can use your lenses for anything. Yeah, you could with any lens. Now, a frog shot with a 500 mm. This is again in Borneo. This is a massive frog which was at a distance. We couldn't have reached there. We were actually on a truck, an open truck, driving around looking for nocturnal mammals. Is when we saw this, and thankfully we had the floodlight to look for mammals, and someone shone the light on it, and we took pictures with a 500. So my point is, you could produce that also, but I will not be able to get finer details. I will not be able to get closer than this, even with a long lens, because the optic minimum is the distance, which means I may not be able to magnify any more detail more than this. That is one. Yeah, sure. All right. So we'll go to different kind of framings. Let's look at vertical frames. Why is it important? Vertical frames also. Almost always we take a phone and we take a picture like this. Very rarely do we nowadays we do because of Insta stories. But as a photographer with a DSLR camera, very rarely do we actually go vertical, right? So why and how do we make vertical images? This is a classical example for vertical. These are two rat snakes combating for dominance. These are both male. Both of them dancing, and they wrestle, they push each other down so that whoever is stronger will be able to push the other opponent down, and he wins. It's as simple as that. So because they are fighting, I would want to make them vertical frame. Why would I make them vertical? Not because they're fighting, because they're longer. So any subject which is taller as opposed to be wider or longer breadth-wise, you make it vertical. So any example would be, let's say, a dog. A dog is walking towards you, okay, head on, straight towards you. It is longer, it's taller in your frame because the body is narrower behind the entire shoulder, right? Now, when it's gone behind, you see only the front legs, the shoulder, the chest, the neck, and the head. That's all you see. So it looks longer. That's when you make it. The moment the dog starts walking sideways, now it's broader, it's longer. The height is not that tall as opposed to the breadth. So because the breadth is longer, you take a horizontal. So that could be a very simple magical trick that you can have based on when to make the vertical. A cheetah cub climbing a small tree. Now I want to show, if I make a horizontal here, I will probably chop off the sky, I will chop off the base of the tree, I will not know how, I will not be able to tell you how tall the cheetah cub has climbed, any of that stuff. Now, when you make a picture like this, always ensure that you anchor the picture. Okay? So ensure that you show the base of the tree also. Otherwise, if I chop it from, say, here, you will again not know how tall it's climbed. So always anchor it. Yeah? So this is one of the reasons why you want to. Remember we said less foreground, more background. This is the same phenomenon. So as opposed to the rule of third, where I do not play with 4 points, I can do 2. That is the horizontal line. I ensure that my tiger is not on the top line, but ensure that my tiger is on the bottom line. Why is there more space up? The sense of direction. She's looking up, and foreground obviously helps, blurred foreground helps. I will want to use that. Yeah? Similar case here, less foreground, more background. Have less below, have more above. Simple. Why is it made vertical? Because both of them look tall, they're both walking towards you. So you make a vertical. A tiger with a reflection. In a case like this, ensure that you take the entire unit, which is the tiger and the reflection, as one entity. Now you cannot move it up and down because it has to be in the middle, right? Because the entire entity is the entire tiger is the entity with the reflection. So in that case, you can keep the horizon. Now, still, if you notice, there is more space in front of her than behind. Why? Because she's looking in this direction. Now, when you make a vertical frame and you're including the reflection, please do not crop your reflection. Please don't zoom in so much that your picture ends here. It is bad because the same rule of 35% or 40% will be applicable for the reflection as well. So always ensure that your reflection is taken fully. Okay? A tiger is coming down a tree. Why would I want to give more space below now? This is foreground because sense of direction. Remember that she's coming down, and hence we want to give more space. So it's very easy, guys. If you take these very basic tips, keep these tips in your mind, and whatever you should know, have this. So let's say you're walking in the garden tomorrow, or your jogger's path, or wherever you're going, and you have a path, and you have trees, and you have people walking towards you, and you make a lovely scene. Have less of the ground, more of the trees. So the person shouldn't be in the center of the frame. Below. Okay, not at the complete bottom. There has to be space below and then the person. But don't keep the person bang in the middle so that you have a lot more. What you could do is you can actually place the person on top, have less trees, but a longer path, because that is what is called as leading lines. So that you can do so. Use any of the 2 points, as I said, out of those 4. Either you keep it the 1/3 lower or you 1/3 on top, your subject. Okay? Similarly, when you're making a portrait, you ensure that the eye falls at the 1/3. Okay. Now, why this line and why not this line? Imagine if I keep my eye line here, I will not be able to show this chest patch at all because the eye will come here, which means my picture will get cut from here. But on top, there is nothing, unnecessarily wastage of real estate. I wouldn't want that, right? So when you are making a portrait, the portrait should be like this, guys. If you see me, yeah, just have a look at my camera screen, please. This is how you should keep it. And not like this, because this would mean the eye is in the center of the frame. So please ensure that don't even keep it like this. This is bad. We're chopping off the chin, right? We're chopping off the body part. So if my head is like this, if you have to crop within my head, if this is 100%, then you have to retain 35%. Only this much. You can't crop it like this. It's bad, right? Because it's more than 50%. That's why you keep it like this so that the eye falls out. So when you're making vertical and you're making a portrait, these are the rules. Now in this case, this eye is at 1/3, but this eye is not. On the right, the animal's eye is not. Why? Because I cannot put it at 1/3. Because the moment I keep it at 1/3, I'm going to chop off the ears. I cannot do that. So that is excusable. Okay, but keep it as much as possible closer to the. If you realize this eye, the animal on the right, it's not in the center of my frame. The center of the frame is here, correct? It's still up, which is all right. Do not plonk it back. But this is ideal. On the left is ideal. The scenario is good where I can. This is a cropped image. I have actually it's a much broader picture. I have cropped it just to display. This is how my portrait should be. This is how my portrait could be also. That you realize that you can emphasize the eye and you have the nose and the chin and all those things. Okay. Let's talk about wide angle and habitat shots. What is the advantage of using wide angle? You can have an ultra wide angle perspective. This is a Nilgiri Thar from the Aravalli Hills in Tamil Nadu. It's found only in 2 states in the entire country, in the entire world, which is Kerala and Tamil Nadu. That's it. And we have got less than 300 of these animals left in our country. Nilgiri Thar. These are forest goats. And now, because of the development, roads, highways coming in, their population is declining at a very solid number. So I wanted to tell a story of the habitat where they live now. Certain population, of course, not the entire, a small population that lives in these hills where there is absolute heavy traffic throughout. So instead of taking a portrait, I would want to choose a wide angle so I can show the story per se. This is a very old bull from Kenya, Amboseli. His name is Craig. He's almost 50 years old. And look at his massive bust, like probably 7-8 feet. Absolutely gorgeous animal. Now, this guy is very close to my car, probably 6 feet, 5 feet. And I used an ultra wide lens 10-22 on a cropped body, which is 50D. So on a cropped body, my 10 becomes 16 mm because Canon has a 1.6x, 6 times crop sensor, which is what APS-C crops would be. So 50D is a cropped sensor, and I would be shooting actually at 16 mm, but it's still wide enough. Now, as per our rule, our guideline, we said that the animal ideally should have been to the left, right? Because it's looking to me. But my cloud, my sun, my beautiful orange sky, all of that will go. So that is a call you have to take at that time. So I am okay living with this picture. I love this picture. I got this published also. I've sold this also. But ideally, same, this should have been there. But certain other components will help you decide where you place yourself. So it's not very, very rigid that you have to do it. As much as possible follow that guidelines, right? A Malabar pit viper snake, again endemic only to the Western Ghats in the entire world, starts from Maharashtra to Kerala. These guys are found only in these 4 states in our country: Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala, and now, a Malabar pit viper. Why would I want to place it at the bottom? Because there is the waterfall behind. I would want to waterfall. It's a good it's a 15-20 second shot. I've used a tripod so that the waterfall becomes blurred, the water becomes blurred, and I have placed the subject below. Why have I placed the subject below? Because I said my second hero of the image is the waterfall, right? And that is where these snakes are found, close to water bodies, including beautiful flowers in the foreground. These flowers grow only on rhino poop. Rhinos have something called as a communal toilet. They all go and take a dump at the same place. They have it across the forest. All the rhinos, essentially, they genuinely have a toilet out in the open. And they will go and take a dump only in those places. And these flowers grow only on that rhino poop. So there's an elephant walking there. I want to take the grassland, the elephant, and the flowers, right? So imagine I zoom in and take only the elephant. I've done justice to this beautiful landscape, beautiful view that I have. That's why I'm saying a wide angle will help. Look at this. It's the sky that is talking to me more as much as the 4 giraffes are. This is in Tanzania. Now, I would want to display, even if the giraffes look small, it's an impactful image for me only because of the cloud. So the hero is the cloud as well. That's why I don't want to zoom in and take a picture of only one of the giraffes. I will take of all 4 and make it smaller using a wide angle so that I take a picture of the entire scene. Shot at 57 mm. The other picture of 2 giraffes again is shot at 80 mm, where I'm much closer to the animal and I can zoom out a little and not go that wide because the smaller guy in the frame, not a smaller giraffe, but in the frame, he is, because he's behind, if I use a absolute wide angle, he'll be lost minuscule in the frame. So this framing is absolutely your decision, guys. You could zoom in more also, take a tighter frame. You could zoom in like this from here and take only the arched back, neck, and the giraffe will be able to do that also. So that's your call. But the idea is if you have a wide angle, you can produce this, otherwise no point of shooting anything else. A lion walking in the Gorongoro crater in Tanzania. It's a large crater, what you're seeing in the mountain. That mountain surrounds you, so you actually go inside the mountain space. It's a mountain that collapsed with it, and the animals are free roaming inside. Massive caldera. Caldera is a mountain that has collapsed inside. It's a crater not caused by a meteor, but because the mountain collapsed within. And imagine you driving in this absolutely tropical, scenic, beautiful place where you drive around and you see these, you are completely surrounded by the mountain. You actually drive down the mountain, right? So I would want to do a justice by showing the mountains, because this is classical Europe. Because in most of the other places I might not see mountains, I see artificial mountains or grass scenes as the end horizon or absolute cloud mountains. So I would rather want to zoom out and take a picture. This is why a habitat shot would be more impactful. Summers in central India, this is Bandipur, Madhya Pradesh, India, where I could zoom in and take a picture of only the tiger with the reflection, which is fine. I actually have a picture of that. But I've also used a 7200 so that I can show the freshness of the leaves, sal leaves. These are all sal trees. They generate fresh leaves in the summer, just before monsoon. So they look really, really pretty. It's very, very hot at this time of year in summer. But this is how the scenario looks like. So I would want to do justice by showing the entire scenario, which is what is called as a habitat shot. Right? Now a habitat shot with a 500 mm lens, because it was very far. I could of course go closer and take a picture of this. Then it's a desert fox peeping out of its hole, its home in a ravine. This is close to Chambal in Rajasthan, and these guys live there. So I would want to make the storytelling image. That's why the habitat shot is important. Making use of light. How is light more critical? I'll quickly skim through pictures. We're already at 6:55. I'll take 5-6 minutes more to finish off this, and then we can go on to Q&A. Make use of light. Early morning, late evening lights are what will make it much beautiful. Like this, it's a back-plane shot. The sun is actually on the other side of the tiger, and it's up, not at the horizon. It's up. So you have a lovely ambience of light, and you see this beautiful rim light, and the young gorgeous tiger is standing out there with the king. So the light is what is making the picture beautiful. If it was at 11 o'clock, harsh light, it would have been this pelican scooping water. These guys in a place called Rangantipu, close to Mysore. These birds, they usually everywhere else they actually sit on the water, scoop water, store it in the pouch and everything. Chicks. But here they don't do that because they're crocodiles. So they just skim through the surface and scoop the water with will and take off. So while they're doing it, early morning shot, you can make some very unique, good light picture. Now again, if this was shot during fast light, it would not be because the light is there. So that is why wildlife photographers try to go early morning so that you are working on light. Instead of using a flashlight here, I have used a torch so that I can illuminate the areas that I want. Because a flash will illuminate everything around it. It's on a big means there is no clutter around. I will be able to see the clutter. So instead of using a torch, you can diagonally down so that the light goes up and doesn't hit the background. That means it illuminates only the area where I want. So you can make some very unique images if you don't want to use a flash. Early morning light. Now this is around 7 o'clock in the morning. The sun is just risen, and this virtuous young male comes and stands out in the sun as if he's sunbasking, and he's looking at the direction of the sun. He was actually looking at a hyena, which he invariably ended up killing. My last slide into that. He ended up killing a hyena there, just within 15 minutes of the shot. And here was an opportunity where I could put this shot underexposed by 3 stops, 3 full stops underexposed, which means I've cut down a lot of light to get this result. For a naked eye, it looks fairly decent, but if you know your play with light, you will produce unique pictures like this. Yeah? A similar picture of 3 macaws. This is Brazil. They are actually flying over a sinkhole, which means like a dark cave, where the cave doesn't have light, but the outside has light. So when the birds fly in front of them, it's only the birds that are illuminated and the background gets darker. Again, underexposed by 2 stops. This is very easy to achieve if you are taking pictures of anything against dark background. Anything. It could be a house. If, for instance, I'm sitting in my living room now, and my bedroom doesn't have light at this moment as I speak to you. Only this tube light is on. So if I have 2 cats by the way. So if my cat is sitting at the door here and I underexpose the picture, because the bedroom doesn't have light, it will give you a black background. And because the cat is sitting out here in the living room, it has light. So you look for such opportunities where the background doesn't have light. Underexposed, you could do that with your phone also. Yeah, almost all phones, you just tap and move your phone. Now you control exposure and you can get a lovely black background. Okay? Torchlight again. These are tadpoles inside small eggs. These are frogs' eggs. All we've done is we've illuminated the leaf from behind with a torch so that you can actually see the transparency in the eggs and you can see the tadpoles. Yeah? Backlit shot when the sun is rising or setting behind the animal, you can produce backlit shots like this, which are golden, absolutely stunning, beautiful light is what you could produce. All of these are created. This would be a silhouette where you're shooting against the sky and you underexpose and you ensure that you don't have any detail in the subject, but you want to show only the silhouette definition of the misty morning. This is Corbett, close to Delhi. Absolutely gorgeous place. A winter morning, and you can actually have beautiful light with the mist coming up and down. So it's the light which is making the picture more beautiful than my rule of third or my composition. Okay. Then a quick thing on moments. What is moments in story? Anything that is action, something killing something, a bird taking off, an animal jumping, emotions, animals hugging, love. All of that is storytelling. So how there you need not worry about composition. Very basic composition, like the rule of third, as I said. Why is the mama bear and the baby bear at the bottom of the frame? Because the usual rule of third. But it's an emotionally connecting picture. A calf suckling on the mother. Right? This is Russia, forest of Russia. These are Kamchatka bears, and we are flat on our stomach and taking a picture. We have an armed guard next to us who's protecting us. But these bears are very, very docile at this time of the year when we go shoot, because they have enough salmons in the sea to eat, in the river to eat. So they're very, very accommodating. So you can take pictures like this. But when they're hunting, this also becomes a moment. This also becomes action, right? Where they're actually, that is how they jump. If you see, this is where the salmon is. There are quite a few salmons in the water and it actually jumps and eats fish. This is the time that they want to eat as much protein and they do a very good job fishing there. So any of this would be action. A storytelling image. This is from Ranthambore, a very famous place. This the place where the female and the male are. There is a courting pair, which means a husband and wife concept, and they are breeding in a hunting palace. This actual structure used to be a hunting palace. The Rajas used to sit there and shoot tigers because there's a lovely lake outside. In this sitting there and shooting tigers today is the breeding ground for tigers. So it could be a storytelling. A tiger stalking a spotted deer. Now imagine if you zoom in and take a picture of only the tiger. Justice, you're not taking a storytelling, right? So this would be helping your composition. So if you are looking for these kind of pictures, where it will help your pictures. A tigress carrying a baby spotted deer for her own cubs. She had 3 cubs at the time, 2-3 cubs, yeah, very small cubs, and she was taking this meat for the cubs to eat. So this again can be a storytelling. So these are the fundamental ways that I think can make you a different and a unique photographer. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming in and attending my talk. Now I would want to take in as many questions possible. I'm not sure if I'll be able to answer all, but I'll definitely try to answer. But while I do that, can I please sincerely request you to just go to the poll option, and I've just launched the poll. Can you please kindly please fill in the poll for me? Yeah, it's a very simple 4 questions. As soon as you finish the poll, I will ensure that I will start answering your questions. A sincere request, guys, because it will help us deliver this better. If you have any more feedback, you can send it to me directly. You can write Canon directly. But this is only for this session. I would very sincerely request you just go to the poll, just quickly fill in the poll, and I'll start reading the question answers. Yeah? I'll give you all 2 minutes. It will take you 10 seconds, guys, without exaggerating. So please be kind and fill up the poll so that we know that we are on the right track whenever we talk. Yeah? Thank you so much. I hope I have probably made a little bit of dent in your photography, and you would start producing better pictures tomorrow or whenever you want to. Let's see. I'm absolutely open to looking at your pictures after. Also, you can stay connected with me on Instagram if you wish. It's called Sachin Drive Photography. Or you can drop me an email. You can follow us on the Canon page. You have queries, you can write to us. We'll try our level best to answer that. Guys, I'm just talking to you so that you can poll. I see there are a lot of people not filling. A sincere request, guys, if you can please, thank you so much. Just one person. Just clicking now. Guys, I can notice. By the way, I'll also know who's not filled. I can see your name and I know you're not filling. I'm kidding. I can't. So don't worry. I can't count this to you, but it'll be nice if you can just fill up. So it's easier for us. Yeah? I'll give you another 30 seconds, guys. If you can, please kindly polling icon. You will see the poll icon on the bottom or the top of your phone or your computer. You just have to go to polling. There are 4 answers: yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Whatever your answer is, you can just fill it and end it. By then, I'll start taking questions. Another 7 seconds before we close the polling, guys. Thank you so much. You've showered a lot of attention on the poll. I see a lot of you all filling up the poll. Thank you so much. I'll end the poll, guys. Thank you so much. Yeah? I have just ended the poll, and now I shall try to read out the questions. Okay. I'll do a stop share. Okay, Jagdish, how are you dealing your composition while in the field? Jagdish, it's a good question. Thank you so much. It's easier for you to visualize when you are in the field to decide. So if you pick up the right equipment with the right lens and say, because I want to show the entire frame, or I want to show only this piece. That's your call. Absolutely your call. Ideally, the best practice is take up your longest lens, take a picture. Take a wide angle, take a different shoots and take a picture. Come back to your house, look at your all 3 pictures and say, hey, I think I connect with this more than that. That's a good way to learn. So you can start that way. Yeah? Thank you so much. Please tell me which camera and which lens are best for wildlife photography. Anuja, thank you so much for the question. I would say anything that fits your budget. Do not worry about it. Any basic SLR, okay, DSLR, 200 and a 700 or 100 so any one of these, I would say 100 400 would be ideal, but if you cannot, then go for 700. Yeah? Thank you so much. Muralidhar is asking, I have Canon 5D Mark IV with Canon 500 lens, usually for birds which are far away. I attach a 2x converter for each, but I cannot capture birds in flight and sudden movements of bird, even if I use tripod. Is there anything I can do to improve my photography skills or camera settings? Thank you very much, Muralidhar. Thank you so much for the question. Muralidhar, what is very critical, I think, if you're saying you have a 500 and you're putting a 2x and you still cannot get it, which means your bird is too far. Do not worry about it. Leave that bird, it's too far. Go for birds that can be closer. Trust me, there are enough places around our cities, from Chennai to Bangalore to Bombay to Delhi. Each of these major cities will have wild or nice gardens or forest areas or rivers or lakes or ponds where you can approach birds. While I'm talking about cities, there are a lot of these small town cities where I don't even have to talk to you guys about. You guys have a lot of forests, a lot of nice, pristine places around, and you can do a good job there. So I would say, Muralidhar, that just go for. Okay, guys, can you see my face? I'm assuming you can see my face. Yeah, I'm just gonna stop share so that I can just read out the questions and I can see my face instead so that I can talk. So Muralidhar, that would be my question. So you don't really have to put a converter and worry about focusing. If you have a tripod, the only reason why you cannot get a bird in flight or focusing trouble is if the bird is far. If the bird is close by, you should be able to do a good job with the 500. Trust me. So it's a possibility of you not getting birds close by. That's all. Okay, let me go ahead. Himanshu is asking the same question. Suggest lens for wildlife photography as a beginner. Himanshu, I've already answered the question. Please go for a 70-300 or you go for a 100-400. Any one of those two. Okay. Okay. Devendra is asking, sir. First of all, I love your work. Awesome. They are. My question is there ample time for composition because moments are so subtle. If I come to composition, I may miss the moment. Absolutely, yes, you could miss the moment. Unless you miss out, you cannot learn. You need to feel the hurt saying, oh man, I did not compose it this way. It's better that you miss out a shot than to take a picture and then say, hey, I wish I had composed it. Of course, you can't take it to your processing table and then compose it if you want. Put in a practice that you have to move your focus point when you are because you will develop a better job. 90% of the time you will have, 10% you will not have the device. For those 10%, alright, you stick to the center focus point and pop your picture and then composing it. But what about the 90 times? Because you will get complacent. Then you'll say, it's okay, no, I'll always go to the Photoshop or Lightroom. That may not be great. So force yourself to put your focus point. Nice. Yeah. Thank you. Econ or is asking, such a white balance is not mentioned, but should that be also one of the criteria for shooting, right? Yes, Econ, I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that, right? Thank you so much for the question. Yes, white balance is very important, but if you are shooting raw, then you do not have to worry about white balance because that you can alter after you shot also. In Photoshop, you can change your white balance depending on what you want to after you've taken the shot. So white balance particularly is not that critical if you are shooting raw. If you're shooting in JPEG, then yes. But all professional wildlife photographers or serious hobbyists will also shoot raw because it will give you the flexibility to compose or give you the flexibility to process also later. So I would say white balance is not critical, but yes, it is important. So what I do is I shoot in daylight. I don't shoot in auto because auto will end up giving a little bit of blue tinge out there in the field if you are a wildlife photographer. So I shoot in auto mode or daylight mode. So you could keep my white balance is perpetually always on daylight because I can always alter it later, as I said. But then why do I switch from auto to daylight? Because at least the viewfinder should look good. No? And I'm looking at it like, hey, there's no blue cast because in auto you might get a blue cast. So daylight is slightly higher temperature and it will look better. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Somen Ghosh is asking how to take eye level, low level shot when you are not supposed to get down from the car. Somen, you cannot. Not always are you in a car. That's why I said if you are loving nature, if you're going out and shooting pelicans out there, if you go to Bharatpur in Rajasthan, you can go. There are lots of places where you can. Only for tigers you need not. For that, you can go as low as possible in the jeep or in the car. You don't have to stand and take a picture. I see so many of you all standing and taking a picture. Go as low. Squeeze yourself between the two seats and go as low as possible. Put the bean bag or your lens on the footboard and take a picture as low as possible. When you cannot, you cannot. But there are a lot of places, my friend, where you can walk around and take pictures, and they need not be large mammals. It could be any other bird or any other animal for that. Thank you. Prashant Sivasa, the crested fireback picture violates the rule of third. Yes, Prashant. It does. Because it's more or less a portrait of a bird, so it may need not have a rule of third. Remember the portrait of the Gelada baboon? I made it in a way where I had to show more space. It's okay. So if you are taking portraits of certain thing or high impactful imagery of only the bird or the thing being prominent, you do not have to worry about rule of third as such. Thank you so much. Avinash Kamath has asked the same question: how do you take high-level shots? I assume I have already told you. Okay. Pankaj Jwirkar is asking: does it mean we need to shoot based on social media in mind too? Meaning different focal lengths based on the platform we need to post on. Not really, Pankaj. Not really. But what else are you going to do with your pictures? Very honestly, you are shooting at a zoom in. 99.9% of your photographs are going to end up on Facebook or Instagram. Let's face it, or your computer. You're not going to print and display it. You're not going to do an exhibition of 50% of your pictures, right? Which means invariably you're shooting for an audience. If you're shooting for an audience, that could be your friends, your colleagues, or anything. I would say you want to make portraits, and all of us would love to make portraits. My request, Pankaj, is do not refrain from taking anything apart from portraits. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying taking portraits. If you have a zoom lens, no, most of all I've seen, everyone is shooting. If they're using a 2300, they're probably shooting at 300. They never come to 70. If you're shooting 100, 400, you're always shooting at 400. Never zoom out to 100. I'm saying the other way around. I'm saying since you are obsessed about portraits, so be it. Can you also zoom out and take a wider perspective? That's all I'm requesting. Yeah, I hope I've answered the question. Thanks. Hello sir, if you are going close like 400 mm in rule of third, where do we place the subject? Even if you are using 400, Sriram, thank you for the question. Even if you are using 400 mm, you can place the grid because just for using 400 doesn't mean that the subject is going to be so close that you're going to take a wider picture. Right? It's not possible. So you may face a subject which is far and you don't really have a choice. And you can use the 1/3 position there. Yeah? Thank you, Sriram. Okay. Devesh is asking a lovely question. Thank you, Devesh. Nowadays, people moving to mirrorless. Question 1. Should we shift to mirrorless if I have one crop and one full frame? Which is ideal for mammals? 100, 400, 400, 2.8 or 500 f4? First question, you can shift to mirrorless. If you wish to, you can. The world is moving toward mirrorless. Yeah? Mirrorless cameras are the game changer. I'm assuming in the next 2 or 3 years, everyone will be using mirrorless. I haven't shifted to mirrorless yet, but I would vouch for it. It's a great. But if you already have cameras in place, you don't really have that desperate a need to shift. You could eventually, maybe a year later, 2 years later, but if you think that now is the time, it's never too late. It's absolutely good to go for mirrorless. There is no flaw. It's only adding more value. So I am saying I already have a camera. I don't have that urge, that desire to switch over at the moment. Hence I haven't. But if you think you would want, please go ahead. But it's good. I would vouch for it. Second is which is ideal for mammals, 100, 400, 400 or 500. I prefer 400 2.8 for mammals because of the working distance and stuff like that, and the beautiful blurred foreground background that I can produce. I used 100 400 for almost a decade before I switched over to 400 2.8, and I still have my old 100 400. I mean, it's a lovely lens. It's just the depth of field because it's a 4.5 to 5.6 aperture. My depth of field will not be as crisp as a 2.8 would be, which is 2 stops difference from 5.6, 5.4, 2.8. So only for that precise reason, I would say 400. Yeah. Thank you so much, Devesh, for the question. Okay. Akon is asking another question. The tiger sideways looks a bit unnatural with half the body. Is there any better way to photograph a tiger sideways? I don't know, Ekon, what do you mean by unnatural? I find it natural. It's a natural animal with natural body parts. I unfortunately do not get the question. If you cannot, if you have a further zoom, then you take only the head and the neck. That's it. If that answers your question. I was using a 400 to point it in that position, and that was the framing that I could have got. I could have zoomed in. I personally do not like to crop it after I've shot it. So I have shown you my 100% full frame. All the pictures I've shown, apart from that one tiger tight close up, every other picture is shot as is in the field. Thank you so much. Okay. Pauline is asking, did you use flash while killing the frog? Pauline, yes. In the two pictures that I've showed, 2-3 frog pictures I've showed, the horned frog, there were only torch lights, there were no flash. But in one of the pictures, earlier I said love nature and I showed you a frog that was from Madagascar. I've used a flash there. But most of the time I use torch lights because it's not very harmful for the frog. I can keep it to the side and then very slowly move it to the frog and stuff like that. You could do that, Pauline. But yes, you could use flash. Yeah. Thank you, Pauline. Okay. Biprajit is asking, please explain macro photography with extension tube versus prime lens versus macro lens. Biprajit, a very simple answer would be go with macro because it's a 1:1 macro. What you see is what you get. The size of the subject in your in real, as opposed to what it captures with the sensor, is exactly the same size. So for that reason alone, you should use macro lens or true macro 1:1 macro lens. A prime lens will have difficulty in terms of minimum focusing distance, and extension tubes will have a problem with the quality of the picture as well as the depth of field, where you'll have to end up stacking images. So my request is please go for a true macro, not a. There are these pseudo macros also. Like some 70-300 lenses will have a flower icon and will say macro, but when I say pseudo, it's not a 1:2. That's all. Okay, it will help you magnify, but not as much as a 1:1. And hence, I would request you to go with a true macro lens. Yeah, thank you for the question. Nasima is asking, which macro lens would you recommend for a beginner in macro photography? I personally would say 100 mm macro is phenomenal. Canon 100 mm is absolutely drop dead piece of it's a great lens to possess. I genuinely think if you could invest, then please go for a 100 mm 2.8 lens. Yeah, thank you, Nasima. Okay, I have another 5 minutes to answer the question. I assume I am running out of time, guys. I'm sorry. Can we adjust the light shadow path of post editing? Okay, Govind is asking, can we adjust the light shadow path of light in post editing? Is it good? What are your views? My views on post processing, guys. I personally, okay, there are a lot of these creative artists who've done phenomenal job. I try to only enhance my picture to the limit what my eye could see and my sensor could capture. So the ochre of an animal or a tiger, the sensor may not be able to capture the same ochre that I have seen because of the white balance or whatever. I would want to alter that. A little bit of dodge and burn and stuff, but I don't go adding light and removing light and stuff like that. I don't go overboard with it, but that's me. People do that. If you're good at it, then please go ahead. Yeah. In certain awards, it's not accepted. In some cases, it is accepted. So thank you so much. Okay, Saurabh Sharda is asking, where did you focus in Craig, by the way, Craig, the elephant with large tusk photo with sun and clouds in the background? I focused on the Craig. Anywhere is okay because if you're using a wide angle, your depth of field is way too much. So there you, sorry. So you just focus on the head or the body of the animal, the entire animal will be sharp because I'm already using f8 or f11. When I'm shooting wide angle, most of the time I'm shooting at either f8 or f11 because I want greater depth of field. By any which means the wide angle will give you greater depth of field, but I would want furthermore and hence make it a greater length. Yeah? Thank you, Saurabh, for the question. Okay, guys, 5 minutes more. I'm assuming I have time before I jump out. Neeraj is asking, hi, such an amazing presentation. Do you own these lenses or take it on rent? I own these equipment, Neeraj, thank you. But it's a good, if you cannot really invest in heavy equipment, you can rent. But I would say own one or two. It's easier when you move around. It's easier for you to have these camera bodies so that you can always rely on something. Okay, I'll take 2 questions, guys. I'm very sorry. You can drop me the questions on Insta. I'll try to answer you, all of you all. Promise. I'll try to genuinely promise to answer all of you all. My Insta handle is Sachin_Rai_photography. I'll take last 2 questions, please. Okay, Sushant is asking what safety precautions and first aids you take in jungle. Ever got scared? Sushant, no man. I never had to worry about this. It's a very very safe place. Trust me, I'll be more conscious about being hit by a car on the road before I reach the place than the place. I've never been attacked by any animal, never been afraid of losing my life or any harm to me in the wildlife. It's an absolutely safe place to be. So don't worry about that. Okay, thank you. I will take just one more question, the last question, because I'm genuinely running out of time. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, I'm sorry, there are too many questions. I'm just trying to see if any of them will make sense to the entire all of us. Yeah? Okay, I am quickly reading one last question, guys. Vinay Kothar is asking, using rule of thirds, is it always better to keep subjects in the sides or corners rather than keeping the subject at the center? Absolutely yes, Vinay Kothar, absolutely, which is what I'm saying. As much as possible, keep it to the rule of third. Unless, as someone pointed out, some of my pictures, the subject will be in the center. Those are portraits, you can get away with it. But if there is enough space around the subject, then please ensure to place it on the corner. If it is close by, then you don't have then you can take a portrait. Yeah. So thank you so much, all of you all. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I hope you enjoyed my talk as well. Please keep in touch. As I said, you can connect with me on Instagram, and I'll try to answer these questions. If you can, please kindly drop the question again. I'll try my level best to answer each one. Yeah. Thank you so much. Be safe and keep shooting. Keep sharing joy. Thank you all. Thank you so much, guys. See you.